The Click R3 podcast is brought to you by the awesome community over on Patreon. To learn more about supporting the show, head over to spawncastnetwork.com. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Click R3 number 4. It's been a good couple of weeks, actually. A lot of stuff happened. I was looking at Ryan and Let's Talk PlayStation. He was rifling through. He was dropping like 50 some odd minute Let's Talk PlayStations. There was stuff everywhere. It was crazy. And then he's driving around in his car to places, hanging out in the parking lot.
Jesus.
Not alarming
John.
anyone, I'm sure, with the PlayStation Portal.
I even mentioned in that
today,
video.
Ryan?
I even mentioned I'm like I'm not gonna walk in the building. Like I can't do that, right? Like
You're not gonna be
you know,
that
some
guy
channels,
who walks in to Taco Bell.
yeah, some channels just do that, like no shame whatsoever. Like especially younger
Yeah.
generations, like full blown dancing in public or taking cameras into stores. You're not getting that from your boy. We're staying in the parking lot, but we did try out the PlayStation Portal's public Wi-Fi capabilities recently.
You didn't roll into Denny's. See, you go up to Denny's, you got an opportunity. You can roll in and
It didn't work though.
get the Grand Slam and
It
hang out
didn't
and play
work.
some PlayStation Portal. Hey,
I gotta
I don't know. Some
go.
of the people there might be interested. They might want to see what's going on over there.
Are you who are you kidding right now? Not a single
Yeah.
goddamn person is gonna ask about a portal.
Go in the Lowe's, walk around with gardening with the PS Portal. No,
That was the best one. That was the best connection. What the
Lowe's.
I couldn't believe it.
Hey, for all the parents with the kids, that's good news. That is good news.
Yes. Well, I don't do you have any fond memories of being carted around from your parents through a Home Depot or something? Because that did not happen to me.
No,
No,
nothing like
okay.
that. No, usually it was boring whenever I'd go there. It was not fun. If it was like picking out paint, it took forever. It was just not. It was not fun. Not a
I
good
don't
time
remember
going there.
ever going to a Home Depot or a Lowe's until I, you know, basically bought a house. So
Yeah, it was usually like home. It was usually Home Depot is one near us, and go there, and it was just boring for. And if you're a kid, it's boring. If you're old, it's more interesting. But to me, it's still not fun because usually you're there because something broke. So
yeah.
it's not like you're going there to celebrate. Usually, I'll say. Sometimes you're finishing a bathroom or something. It's like, all right, cool. But most of the time you're there unexpectedly. So, that's fine. But uh, good stuff here. Excited for the podcast tonight. Ryan, what do we got? You got what do we got on the docket anyway? What do we got today?
Oh, John, we got a lot of news going on, a lot of things going on in the PlayStation landscape, which, we kind of been in the slow period. We're still in the middle of summer, basically. And, coming out of the not E3 season, it's when it slows down a little bit. But we've had
July
some
is usually a little
rumors.
quieter.
Yeah, we've had some rumors and things like that pop up, and got to at least cover up some things that we haven't gotten to from the previous episode. So, real quick, we talked about this in the last episode, but there was the PS Plus leak, and now we have the full lineup. It's already live on PSN, so just the full lineup for Extra this month: Remnant 2, Crisis Core, FF7 Reunion, Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous Enhanced Edition, and then Mountain Blade 2, Bannerlord, No More Heroes 3. Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes, and then Jackbox Party Pack 9, Deadcraft, and Steep, which, FF7 Reunion really being the headline title there easily.
That's the
And
big
then,
one. No More Heroes 3 is pretty
yeah.
good too. If you haven't played that, I think that's a cool one.
And then PS Plus Premium, more PSVR 2 games. So we have Job Simulator, the native version there. Summoner for PS2, just did not expect that. Ratchet and Clank Size Matters, PSP, and Jeanne d'Arc for PSP as well. Loving the PSP stuff, by the way. They're touching some bangers recently. I'll tell you
I've
that
never had an
much.
issue. Their PSP selection has been good. Ever since it started. I've not had a complaint with the PSP side at all. I think they've done well.
It's definitely the PSP stuff's been I would say much stronger than the PS1 stuff we've seen thus far.
Yeah.
And it's going to get stronger too. Did you see this email that's been getting sent out? It's a genuine email that's
I
just
saw Secret Agent Clank.
yeah. So it's like it's official. It's an official promotional email. If you leave your marketing check off for your
Mhm.
email, you're going to get this sent to you, and it says for PlayStation Plus Premium that enjoy all these great titles like Secret Agent Clank, and it's like, well, that's not on there just yet. And that's like the fourth or fifth time we've heard about a game coming to premium. So they
I
kind of
didn't have a lot of
overlook that.
experience with that one on the PSP. I actually remember that on the PS2, as weird as that sounds, because I was like
Yeah.
09 or something. It was like late.
Kind of a
That's when I remember there.
tragedy kind of a tragedy with a lot of those PSP games back in the day because almost all of them they launched on PSP first. They were like PSP experiences from the ground up, and then they got a PlayStation 2 port like a year later.
Yeah, that's one I wouldn't mind checking out but I assume it's gonna be the PSP version, not the PS2 version. That's my assumption.
I would have
Okay.
to figure
Yeah.
it as, even though PS2 is open now. But Summoner is an interesting one. Did you ever play Summoner? That's a PS2 launch title, I believe.
I saw it pop up occasionally at the stores when we get it traded in. I have never played it. I
No.
looked at the screenshots and I was like, that looks like extra crunchy.
It's a launch game. If I remember correctly, it's like one of the not great launch games, but you might have had it like if you bought a PS2 on day one
Better or
because it's
worse than
like,
Orphan?
oh, I think it's worse probably.
Really?
If it
The
is,
box art for Orphan's better.
yeah, true,
That
true,
that's the
yeah.
level we're at. We're like, "I think the box art looks a little better, right?" It's like,
Well,
well,
we're
same price.
curious though how many PS2 games we'd get, or if they'd like just skip this month again or something. So we got one, right? It's gonna be slow. If we get one a month, we might just end up with like a little over 12 by the end of the calendar year, basically.
Well,
Or
we have
the
Summoner, so there's always a chance for Orphan. Right there,
Yeah,
launch title. Yeah, come on.
that's true.
Let's bring it full circle. This is Orphan.
Have
I need the new generation to suffer too.
yeah, I don't know many people are chomping at the bit to play Summoner. How about some PS Plus games that are leaving the catalog? So by the time you're listening to this, you're probably going to have about 2 weeks left to get your time in on these. But NBA 2K24, Need for Speed Unbound, Spellforce 3 Reforced, Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed, and Trials of Mana. Those are leaving
Oh,
around
Trials
mid-August,
of Mana
whatever.
is leaving. Ooh, that one
Yeah,
hurts. Okay.
whatever that day is for the Wednesday that it would go
That's
up
the only
for the
issue with
next month.
all these subscription services really as you don't know the next month a game you might play regularly or be looking forward to is on its way out. It's like, man, you don't know. You don't know what's going to leave and I mean it's exciting cuz you don't know what's coming in so they can surprise you, but it's not fun to see like a Trials of Mana. That's a good game and if people missed out on that, they should play it right now. Like fire it up. Get going.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, at least they give you, and this depends on if they actually update this damn section on the store. Sometimes they don't, which is annoying. But as long as they let people know a month ahead of time, you've got a solid month, especially for like, some of the ones on here that could take a long time. Like I think Unbound's a pretty long game. You put like
Need for
30,
Speed
40,
Unbound, yeah.
yeah, 30, 40 hours into that, right? If you can only play weekends, then you might want to start getting your time in on that. But those are leaving on August 14th, I believe. So those are your PS Plus games that are going to be exiting very soon from the game catalog. I believe those are all PS Plus extra games, by the way. None of them are categorized as premium titles, which I always double check that. Now, getting into some firmware, a lot of updates sent out recently for PlayStation hardware, as we just mentioned for the Portal. So they did update this to 3.0.1, which does acknowledge the problem that we discussed previously. So now the Portal can connect to 5 gigahertz public Wi Fi signals. I was out in the field testing that.
Hey,
It
testing it.
does
He's out there.
it does work. Um, if anything, that little dumb experiment I did, I think, was more reflective of how many businesses do not have Wi-Fi that works. Period. So
And
it
you did it
works.
from the parking lot. If people go in, they should get a better experience. So there you go. Your
Yeah,
worst case
ideally,
scenario in that video.
I did. The thing you didn't see in that video is I always checked my phone first, right, to make sure the
Oh,
phone
okay.
would even connect. And it's like
Yeah.
anything the portal couldn't connect to, like the phone wasn't connecting to either. So I would imagine if it's like a good solid signal and like whatever sort of infrastructure they have allows it to actually operate correctly, then
Mhm.
the portal should connect to it. Um, but we've also got a new PlayStation 5 firmware beta that rolled out recently. This beta, the last 3 or 4 betas really have not been that massive. They're in a way, it seems like they're slowing down on this. But there's like one pretty big thing in here I would consider to be a kind of a worth talking about, which is custom 3D audio profiles. Because this goes all the way back to 2020 during the PlayStation 5 reveal, the road to PS5 GDC not GDC discussion. Once they got to the Tempest 3D audio tech engine, and Mark Cerny was talking about how everybody has we interpret sound differently. Yeah, that's your HRTF profile. So they try to 3D map the like your ear canal. And Mark was even saying, in a way, he's like, yeah, maybe you'll send in a picture of your ear someday,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now
What
that
a
never
world that would
happened.
be.
That never happened. But the console always launched with like audio presets, 5
Mhm.
audio profiles and settings. I always tell people, like, if you just get a PS5, head to settings, just pick one that sounds like the most level to you. That's how they try and work you through the wizard at the time. But now custom profiles are here. Uh, the shocking thing is, I actually got into this program without people sending me a code, so now I'm finally in it. I
Oh,
did set up
okay.
a 3D audio profile. It's actually pretty thorough. It takes like between 5 to 10 minutes. You go through like 7 different pages of like sound profiles of like you put on your headphones
Mhm.
and you see this sort of visual 360, I guess, cursor that you can move around. And when you hear a sound, you're supposed to move the cursor around the 360 of your head and determine where you think it's coming from. And you go through like 20 or 30 of those, I think. So you really, like, in a way, are it sounds like you're
Hmm.
really, fine tuning the audio profile more for you than what we had previously. I haven't really had a chance to sit down and like try out a bunch of 3D audio games, but I think I'm going to try that next weekend to see if it makes some sort of like meaningful difference. Because I don't know
Interesting.
about
Okay.
you, but like 3D audio for me has been hit or miss. Some games sound really good, and some I'm like I can't tell the
I
difference.
feel like I want to say Returnal might have been one of the better ones for me, if
Yeah,
I'm
that
not
was for me.
mistaken. I'm curious. So you can just set up a profile and you can just change between them just in the menu. So if you had, I guess, if you had your sound bar, or then you had your nice headphones, and then you had maybe headphones that had your microphone that you use for multiplayer, you can just switch between them for each device too.
Well, yeah, if you set up the 3D audio profile, it'll never be on unless you if you have headphones connected. I don't know if
Right.
there's still that weird issue though where if you turn on 3D audio, um somehow I guess the console tries to apply the 3D audio container to like all audio for all games
Mm.
period, and sometimes it sounds a bit tinny. I don't
Mhm.
know if I'm not an audiophile guy, so could never really pick up on that issue. That's what I hear. But
Right.
usually, if you're not playing like 3D audio with headphones, then it'll be off, and then you'll be using, let's say, 3D audio for TV speakers or for the soundbar or whatever the case is.
I thought about getting one of the nice headphones that Sony puts out there. They have like the not necessarily you have the earphone ones, right? Like the little earbud ones.
I've got them all: the Pulse Explorer, the Pulse Elite, and then the standard Pulse 3D.
What's the move then? Is it
I think it's
the
a
Elite?
preference thing. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you, the Elite for $150, only
Mhm.
$50 more than the standard Pulse, is actually really good. Like, it's a really solid
Mm,
set of
okay.
headphones. I don't know what it was.
Okay.
I tested it. I benchmarked it with like my other pair of that other line that Sony has, the End Zone, the Sony End
Mhm.
Zone.
Yeah.
So I've got I think it's called the H9 of that, which is like the $300 one. It's really nice. It's heavy on bass. So
Mhm.
you don't have the same bass level, but like I was playing a bunch of 3D audio games at the time when I reviewed the Pulse Elite, and I would like in the moment just swap headphones like between all three: the standard Pulse, Pulse Elite, End Zone, and the End Zone is heavier on bass, but the Elite is noticeably like sharper, and you can get an idea of locality much better than the standard Pulse. So
Okay.
that seems like a good pick for sure. Well, because they're using planar magnetic drivers, which is
Mhm.
the key difference.
So you just said he wasn't audiophile. Now you're using this lingo. Okay.
That's why I had to learn it,
What is
because
this now?
I didn't really I didn't really know it at the time, but I sat down and learned about it. But the Elite's pretty good.
Okay.
The other thing in the firmware though for this beta, remote play enabling per user. So right now it's like a blanket on off switch. Console can either use it or it can't. Now, like on a user by user basis, you can turn that on or off. Excuse me. Then there's adaptive charging. This is only for PS5 Slim models. Not sure if you saw that, but it's only
Mhm.
for slim consoles, which maybe it's because the USB-C port. I don't know what the case is, but just optimizes charging for your controller so you don't have to have that 3 hour setting or like the complete off setting, whatever the case is. You can restore licenses on a per game basis. So kind of the same deal there. Usually if you have any sort of like license issues on PSN, like, you're online, you're logged in, if you've still
Yeah.
got a little lock on your software, you usually go into settings and restore all licenses. Now you can do that on a per game basis. There's storage space recommendations in the storage settings, which I looked into that. It seems like the only little message that'll come up is like if you're Well, the one I saw, because the patch notes say this will only come up sometimes. So the only time I saw it is when I was looking at save data, and some save files it would say this game is not on your storage or whatever the case, like whatever like is applicable in that case. Like this game is on your installed or this game is not installed. So maybe it's just to let you know like what you do or do not have. So what's easily playable off that save file. I'll have to look into that more.
Okay.
Then there's simplifying game hubs, which I think they kind of run that they say a lot in the patch notes here. I think what they're getting at with this is that you know how it was like 2 or 3 firmwares ago, and a lot of people did not like this change where on the UI with every single game tile, the the game will use up the entire screen with a background image of that game. Once you launch that game and you start playing it, if it has activity cards, which a lot of games do have, then an activity card will eat up the entire background, and that activity card will usually be like a generic screenshot from the game or something. And some people don't like that. Sometimes they just like the standard key art and they'd rather have the key art up there instead of the activity card. I think that's what they're doing, is that they're reverting back to making sure that it's always the key art, unless you're doing an activity card that's like active, like you're working towards it. Like the example I can give here, right, is going like this might happen to you with God of War Ragnarok. The entire game, the game hub always said the what are they called? Odin's the crows, right? Yeah, that one activity card where you're hunting for all the crows, that was always my like full screen image for that activity card, which is like silly because it's like, yeah, you're always working towards that, but like, why would you not use like the main mission card for that? It just seems a bit silly. So I almost feel like they're trying to address that quirkiness with the game hub.
Seems like there's a lot of fine tuning in this update.
Yeah, that's what I would think is going on here because it's weird with game hubs, man. I've been watching this a lot with how they've tried to get people to use activity cards because clearly people are not using them the way people want them to. Because that was another 2020 sales pitch of PS5 is that the UI is built around this this whole idea that like, oh, you can jump right to multiplayer, you can jump right to this mission, you can jump right to this like save point or whatever from the activity cards in the either in the control center or in the game hub. But most people just like cold start games like they always used to do, right? Like, do you use cards at all?
Not really. I just go into the game.
Yeah.
I'll just usually I even close it out when I'm done. I don't even leave it like in where you go to rest mode and leave the game kind of up. I just close the game out. No, I've had with Elden Ring specifically, I've had some crashes here and there. So I got into the habit of just closing Elden Ring completely when I go back to the menu and I'm done for the day. I haven't really used especially with like Elden Ring, the DLC, there's nothing really with that. There's no trophies or anything. So you're not really ever tracking much. You're going through. And that's the thing I would have liked to have seen with that, to have trophies to know which bosses I've beaten and which I haven't, or how many of these statue trees I've had in different areas. Like there are probably ways they could have gone about that, but they don't utilize. So especially with this, which the DLC has been a bit of a time sink, just trying to beat all these bosses. And I mean, at this point, I might try to almost 100% the thing really where I am now, but tracking it has been, it's non-existent. So I haven't really even looked at the activity cards.
Yeah. In a 4-year period, I always try and be aware of them and check them out. Like whatever game I boot up, like, oh, let's check out the cards. How is the studio using the cards? Because like third parties is usually where like these kind of more bespoke features like fall off a cliff. First party will always use them, but a lot of third parties, they're very basic cards. Like like it's in the SDK. Like you can do ones with tracking, like you're talking about, right? Which are always like super helpful if like you just want to know how long it takes to do something or how far along you are on a particular thing that you're working towards. Like studios can always do it, but most of them don't. That and like estimated time as well. Like a whole key principle of activity cards was the estimated time. Like, oh, before I start this mission, how long is it going to take me? So like a lot of first party games, you'll see it says like 35 minutes. It'll say 5 minutes. It'll say
I saw a
10.
lot. I used that with Spider-Man 2 actually here and there, where they had different missions that you could get into, and it would be like, oh, it's 15 minutes for this mission. It's like, okay, good. No, I'll just go that way. But for the most part, third party ones, you're right. It's like sometimes it's actually, other times though, it's like non-existent. They just don't really do much with it. So
they just don't use them. So I feel like the company is sort of figuring out how to make cards like not even useful, but like maybe not in their own way, right? Because they
Mhm.
kind of shoved them onto the game hub, but like people are just not using them. So that's the firmware. There is one other change where they're like changing where you can like actually use the invite new game option because that'll appear in a card as well. But like there's multiple areas where that shows up. I guess they're just like cutting that off to where you have to start the game first before that option appears. So that would make sense. But yeah, that beta rolled out recently. Usually they stay in the program for about a month and a half, 2 months. So this will go live for everyone very soon. And they seldom like add new things by the end of it. But if there's any other new things that pop up, we'll obviously go over that at the time. Then we have the PlayStation 4 Explore beta, which that I can say is ending like now, basically,
Mhm.
because that's all server side, so it's not attached to a firmware or anything. I have it. I know a few other people that do have it. So my console told me recently there was a big tile on the screen that the beta is ending on July 31st. So it's going to not only close, but I'm actually going to go back to the old Explore icon
Oh,
now. Yeah, which sucks
really?
because it's like,
That's interesting.
yeah, it's
They're
lame.
kicking you back. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I would hope that means like, okay, they got their feedback. Now they're going to figure out like what this thing's going to really look like before they ship it. But I
Okay.
hope they ship it out for everybody because it's still only the Explore icon's only for US consoles. And I think a lot of people would like to have this if it looks the way that it does with all the widgets.
It wouldn't surprise me if they just test it in one region. I mean, these companies do it all the time, test something in one region just to see how it goes, just get feedback from one place and then roll with it from there. So maybe they just picked the US for it and let's see how it does. So,
Well, the problem, John, is that no console, anything outside the US does not have the Explore icon. Like it's been like that since launch.
mhm.
So in theory, that's why the US got this. Is because we're
Right.
the only consoles that have the Explore icon. But it's like nobody else was missing out on anything because the Explore icon's glorified advertisements, basically. So
Well, it's like 80% of this industry, just glorified advertising. Yeah, basically.
I hope if it's going to go live everywhere, then that's what will end up
Mhm.
happening. Let's move on to PlayStation VR 2
No, okay.
because a few things going on here. The app is now live on Steam. Can't download it, but it's up there
Mhm.
now. And what an opportune time because next week we have the PC adapter coming out. That still costs $60, but PSVR 2 is on sale right now. And it's down, it's pretty low. $350 for a base model without Horizon. If you want the Horizon pack in, then that's $400. Which I'll tell you what, that's a lot more compelling than 500 or 550.
It is. We had some news actually break as well in the last 24 hours that sales actually jumped 2,300%. Now, if the sales were low and it jumped 2,300%, it still might not be a super impressive number, but that's trending in the right direction. And shocking, price goes down, sales numbers individually go up. Not hard to believe, but honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if a vast majority of that were PC owners. And the reason I say that is because on Amazon, it sold out, like just the headset and the Sense controllers, whereas you can still buy the bundle that has Horizon with it. That's still in stock. And I know that's a little more expensive, it's $50 more or whatever, but still, you wouldn't need that Horizon code if you're bidding on PC. So I think a lot of people are picking this up in anticipation of its PC launch for that app and compatibility. And they're gonna get the little adapter box, and altogether, it's what, just over $400 shipped. That's for in the world of PC when you can get keyboard and mouse combinations that can get close to that amount. That's actually not bad in, again, a very expensive hobby with PC gaming. So compared to other headsets, I understand that maybe some people would look at that and say, okay, now it's time. I would like to think that Sony works through some of the features that are missing, maybe through different updates or patches. And if they don't, I mean, let's be real. We know what's going to happen with the PC community. They're going to attack this thing full force and figure it out one way or the other. So, but hey, that's the beauty of it going to PC. You don't necessarily have to wait for the platform holder to add the features or fix it. So, I am getting the adapter box though, because I'm going to try it here with my PC.
Okay. That'll be
I'm going to do it.
interesting to see for sure.
Yep, I'll play Half-Life Alex with it. That apparently is, they really want me to. Apparently, they keep saying it.
I know
So
it's just so dirty how that official image came out. Yeah. I couldn't
Well,
believe that was official. I was like, "Oh, wow, that they're really saying, like, that's how you're playing that game."
I still can't believe they didn't get that locked down. That seems like a slam dunk thing. I guess Valve was really like, yeah, this is staying with Steam.
I mean, you
Yeah.
almost have to, like, it seems like almost a surefire thing that they tried. I don't see any world where they did not, like, approach Valve and try and get that
Oh
ball
yeah.
rolling. Yeah, so yeah, that sucks because, well, either way, this is still what I would have liked to see out of the headset for sure. It needs a booster shot, and there's no better booster shot than making the thing a lot more affordable. So I would like to see it permanent, though. Let's see a proper
At price.
MSRP cut.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Yeah. I assume they just had a bunch of stock sitting. I mean, we heard reports that they did, and they thought, you know what, let's get these things out there. We got the momentum with the PC release, and it seems like they cleared a lot of that stock. So it's mission accomplished on their side. But you're right. I think that price point of 399.9 is the move for the headset. It's not going to be 350 for like I think this is a big sale for them. 399.9 I think makes a lot of sense for this headset by next year if they really want to sell these things. I wonder how much money they're losing on each one then though. That's my big question. How much money are you losing if you sell this thing for $400 a pop?
yeah. I mean, I always like to think that it's in such a like a really rough spot, given that it's also like just a really bad time. Like by the time this thing shipped, it's like we just came out of COVID, all the crazy like household spending and hobby spending, like that all cooled down, and they ship a $500 virtual reality headset, which is already a niche market, which was so yeah, right off the top, this thing wasn't going to do crazy numbers, but it's like that was a really rough time to ship a
Do
super
you
expensive
think
headset.
if this headset launched within 2 or 3 months of the PS5 coming out and we were still in that COVID situation where people were staying at home and finding things to do, and then it had PC support day 1, do you think this would have had, like, a much more significant launch and, like, momentum even a year later just from having that sorta release environment?
Would you say would it be at the same price still, 500 and 550?
Yeah, it'd probably still have to be that price, especially at COVID where, like, it was I mean, things were expensive behind the scenes with the supply line and it still would have probably been that price, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, it would probably be doing a hell of a lot better than what it's doing right now. I do always like to preface this with saying though that I don't think there's like any PSVR 2 numbers that would like, sort of shake off this identity thing that the headset has, because like every VR headset kind of has this like baggage of, oh, VR gimmick, so I feel like no matter what number is attached to it, it would probably still get flack, but I'm more than certain, like, it would probably be at the very minimum, like, comfortably outpacing the sales pace of PSVR 1, which I think this thing's not keeping up with it. Like, Sony hasn't disclosed that number since last year, and the only, like, sales chart we have is like, "Oh, it sold, like, what, 600,000 or something in the first 8 weeks," or whatever, and they show that chart where, like, the sales curve was, like, already slowing down. It was only 8% ahead of PSVR. I'm like, "Oh, so what you're
Cut that
telling me is
chart
that
real quick.
this is the last time you're ever going to talk about sales numbers for this thing." So if that was the circumstance you're proposing, if that's what happened, like here's PSVR 2 right away, here's PC support, we'll embrace it fully, and we'll also support all those features on PC. Yeah, I think it would probably be doing pretty well.
The thing though with the PC release, I mean, they wanted to tie it to the PS5 obviously because there is money to make after you sell the headset because people would then buy VR games on your device. Once you sell this to people on PC, you're not really going to get much more money out of them. Like that's it. You just sold them the headset. They're going to buy stuff off Steam that you don't get a cut from. They're not from as a first party releasing VR game. If they had a bunch of VR games in the pipeline and they look super high quality and they're going to make money from these things, let's get that headset out there. I get the initiative to do that, but this to me it just feels like them, especially now with the sale, it feels like them going, "Okay, we need to be able to sell some of these headsets. What do we do? Okay, PC support, put it on sale. We'll get rid of some of the stuff in the warehouse now." I don't know. I do wonder if like so obviously the big push was for VR to become a thing and the big push has come from I mean some of the biggest companies, Meta, they're really trying to make this thing work. and Apple, Sony, these are all big companies, and it just does not feel like VR has really gained that much traction over the last 6 years or so, 7 years, when it seemed like dude, once Facebook changed the name to Meta and you have Mark Zuckerberg wearing this headset and walking around with it, you're like, okay, this is probably the push that VR needs. And it just doesn't seem like it's really taken off, maybe like they were thinking. And you're right, that's the biggest issue with PSVR 2 is that it's a VR headset. That's
Yeah.
it. It's VR. It's like, well, I
That's why I'm like, I'm just not convinced. Like when people say, "Oh, there's no backwards compatibility and it's expensive and it's got the wire and no PC support," I'm like, "Hey, I'm with you. Let's fix all those things. But if you fix all of them, this thing's not going to like start shipping 20, 30 million. It's just, it's just not. It's not going to
yeah.
happen."
I think just it is a lonely experience if you really sit down and think about it. At its core, it's a lonely experience because you put the headset on and you're taken away from your surroundings. And I still think the I think the experience that would be easier to sell the mainstream is the augmented reality, where mixed reality, whatever you want to call it, where you can see things around you still. Because once you put that headset on, you're not gonna break that out at like a family gathering or a party or something where everyone's hanging out. It doesn't really have that. The console experience is kind of that social experience as well at times with the multiplayer and the local play and you just hand controllers and stuff. VR just does not play into that. So I don't think it's really caught on. Has it caught on in the workplace? Has
That's what
anyone
I,
has anyone gone to work
that's,
and been like, yeah, this is it right here. I got my headset on. Let's do it.
yeah, that's the thing. I think at this point in the game, right? Because entertainment's, as you say, it's just like it's not moving the needle like I think everybody thought it was going to, especially Meta, considering how much money they're pumping into it still. I would assume the takeoff here is enterprise, right? Just figuring out like because that like, in a way that's kind of where like the Vision Pro is with
Yeah.
its mixed reality spatial computing. Like obviously that thing's low volume and crazy expensive, and most of the use cases Apple has shown off is entertainment based, but like
Mhm.
they're still they spend a lot of time showing like, hey, this is how you can work on this thing.
Mhm.
I would assume if some of the enterprise contracts start getting put into place and you've got like a bunch of these things getting used like day in and day out and like an office setting, maybe that's where it starts before entertainment, oddly enough. But it's clear that like everything that Sony's done right now, all demand triggers. They didn't want to do these things.
I think if you walk into a workplace and you're going up to a blank table and they hand you what look like sunglass like that size sunglasses, just like regular glasses, you put them on, and then what that blank table is now an entire, we'll just say complex that's being built out and they can spin it around it. At that point, when it's just something you pop on your just like that and you still see everyone around you, I feel like that makes a lot more sense in the workplace as opposed to I mean, even the Meta Quest Pro or whatever. I mean, it's a whole thing that's sitting on your head, and it looks like to me. You know what it looks like? It looks like something 30 years from now, our kids are going to look at in pictures and just make fun of us for using. Like it's going to be like that. Like grandkids are going to make fun of like how we look back on. I mean, you could look at old VR headsets. And really, it's strange. They don't look that different from what we have now. I mean, maybe a little bit, but that's kind of how I think of it. I think of the person walking around with the massive cell phone with the huge antenna sticking out the top, and I'm like, you believe they used to have to do that? And it would be similar situation if it continues to advance. But I almost wonder if eventually these companies do they just back away from VR if it's not move. Like, how much longer do they stick with this?
Well, that's the thing, right? Because I think with Sony, and if there's a report about this, like maybe like right before PSVR 2 came out, or maybe shortly after. I think it was from Bloomberg, from that like one writer that people like just straight up don't like because they like always publish like bad news about Sony. But
Oh, Takashi Machizuki.
yeah, that one report. But here's the thing: this one, I was like, yeah, fully believe this, which is Sony is still doing it because they want to be like positioned for it. So
Mhm.
if it takes off, like they've done the R&D, they've got active R&D resources, they've got products that shipped and they have market research. Like there's even when like it takes off eventually. I mean, one company that has done zero VR investment versus one that's been doing it and taking all those losses for like 20 years. one's going to be a much better position than the other. So, if Sony is, only doing PSVR 2 to, be positioned in VR in case it takes off, like I fully believe that's the case. This thing is, by every metric, a sort of, niche Halo product or whatever, how you look at this thing and go, okay, how is this like worth it in Sony's for their bottom line? I think in the
Mhm.
here and now, it's clearly not. But like that's also why Meta is willing to, lose billions. Because if it does
Right.
take off and you're positioned for it, you know, there's so much upside to be like that company that is like sort of like taking in that potential revenue of like, oh, we're the next Microsoft Office for this kind of application in a work setting or in the entertainment environment, where if we're the next Netflix. So I would almost assume that's what it is. If anything, the big question is, you know, do they do a PSVR 3? Do we
That
get
is
a
the question.
PS
I was gonna ask you that.
Yeah. Do we get a PSVR 3 knowing full well this thing is gonna like end its lifetime kind of where PSVR 1 was, which wasn't bad. Like it sold like a few million. It's got a library of games. They're fun games, but it's like do they keep that R&D department going? Do they actually ship another commercial product just so they're positioned for VR?
Yeah, that's tough because the VR itself is a very unique experience where you have to completely develop for that device. Like it has to have the functionality that's where you're turning them, you're using, you're holding things differently in the game, you're picking like it's a whole different perspective than if you're just playing I don't know, where Concord or whatever, right? You're playing Last of Us something. It's gonna match up differently. You'd have a VR mode specifically for that. So I almost you can't even compare it to if they did. People I see people who go, well, they should have made a handheld instead of this. And yeah, perfect world. Yes, I throw out VR, throw in the trash, get a handheld in here. The technology clearly was not ready yet for a handheld to match up to probably what they want, which is same games across both. And we're seeing that effect now with VR because you can't do same game across the board, no real additional work required. This is what would have happened, probably, let's be real, probably with the handheld. It would have been something very similar. So I think the only way you get a PSVR 3, I don't say only way because I don't know who knows, next year something crazy come out VR. It could be like an Among Us or something and it explodes online and everyone's trying to get headsets but the only way is if they figure out some path to where there's minimal work to port a PS5 game or a PS6 game even to the next VR headset and it's an all-in-one device to where it can be sold just separately. It's simpler to set up. There's no wires, but I don't know if that's even a future that Sony wants to go down with patents and R&D. That just seems like such an undertaking for what could be just a minimal payoff.
It's a solid point. It's one I didn't really consider, but you're 100% right. Because I was just thinking, like this thing lives and dies by even if they make a PSVR 3, it lives and dies by software support. If there's
Mhm.
no studios making games for this thing, it's over. Like there still has to be a sustainable environment for studios to make a game, ship it, and like it does well enough for them to get paid and make money and make another game. A great case study right now is First Contact Entertainment. They shipped Firewall Ultra on PSVR 2. Obviously didn't sell. They shut down.
Or
There
shut
has to be
down.
there has to be studios to do this as well. Like I still firmly believe, right? Because like a big complaint with PSVR 2, and I can't abide to this at all, is like, oh, there's no exclusives. There's not enough exclusives. Dude, this thing doesn't need exclusives. It needs games. And it
Yeah,
and,
just
and
games in general.
it needs not only does it need games, Meta needs games.
Mhm.
PCVR needs games. They all need games, and all those studios need to ship their games on all those headsets. This is a niche market. Like we have to look at it differently. We can't look at this and go, oh, well, there's only Call of the Mountain and Gran Turismo 7. We can't look at it like traditional consoles. I just think it's a rising tide lifts all boats. If it's going to benefit everybody involved, if we just get more games and more developers can like comfortably thrive off it. But to your point, like, yeah, like some barriers have to get brought down. Like if Sony does a standalone PSVR 3 down the road or something, and the SDK environment's very approachable and it's easy to get a game up and running on PSVR 2. There's actually a company called Flat to VR which does that. Like they step in and facilitate VR to or flat to VR as the name implies.
Well, keep an eye
So
on them. If Sony makes a move and buys them, there you go. PSVR 3 is incoming. And
yeah, we need more of that.
but if it is an all-in-one device, they could still sell it to PC users because you can buy a Meta Quest and then plug it into your PC and use it as a headset. But then Sony would be selling something that would immediately direct people who buy it to their marketplace where they'd make money. So there is a reason to make it beyond just the initial sale. So that's what I'm trying to think there. Why would it make sense to come up with something like that? Well, if it does get you to a store that they own, then maybe. But it would also technically cut down on the price needed to get in because you wouldn't need their console then. I mean, I guess you look at the headset as its own console at that point. Like it
Yeah.
would be an all-in-one system. The MetaQuest 3 is that. So that's if we get technology to the point where you can do that and the headset can handle probably it's not going to obviously look like a PS6 game, but if it can handle games similar to what we kind of think might be possible now with the handheld, especially after what I'm seeing with things like the ROG Ally X, which the battery life is much better now. It's still a big system, but I kind of see the potential now with the future of these chips getting more and more advanced and being able to jam these massive batteries in there. I think we could see a handheld out of Sony, which makes me wonder because a lot of those components would also go into a headset like this. I think that's possible. So that's the big question. Would they pursue potentially a 3 system ecosystem with a handheld, a console, and a VR headset, all being able to act on their own?
Right. No, it's well said. And historically, we've seen Sony kind of struggle with that. So
Yeah. Yeah, but
hopes
the
aren't
idea
high.
is they play all the same games. That's the idea. That's
Yeah.
if they get a company that can translate these games over to VR, maybe not every single one, but minimal effort with their SDK or whatever it is, then maybe. But that feels like such a the planets have aligned, so we're gonna do this now kind of thing. Whereas reality being, probably not worth it. So that's
That's a solid point. All right, let's talk about something that's also not great news, and that's Concord. So
yeah.
Concord has well, here's the thing, John. New DualSense, a new Concord DualSense. So the pre-orders are available right now on PS Direct, coming out August 23rd, same day the game comes out, for $84.99 USD, which is
Whew.
yeah, I think this thing's gonna stay in stock for as long as the LeBron James one did. So there's that. But let's talk about the Steam Peak CCU,
Uh,
which never got over 2300 for the open beta. Now you did play it. You talked a little bit about it on Spawncast. I'm
I,
sure
s- I
you're not
I
feeling too
struggled,
much.
man. I struggled to go back to the open beta. I was like one of those things where I'm looking at the icon. I'm like, I'm really about to close Elden Ring for this. Oh
Yeah, because
gosh.
you played the closed, right? You did the first
Yeah.
weekend.
And I went into the open beta and it just wasn't grabbing me. This game, I really just don't have much interest in it, even after these betas. I mean, the game itself is it's just fine. That's literally how I would explain it. Just fine. The problem, it doesn't stand out. So it's a hero shooter, which it's functional. So Firewalk has done a good job delivering a game that doesn't break on me when I'm playing it. Also, I don't think the servers were stressed particularly hard, but still, we have if we criticize games as much as we do for them breaking on launch or even in betas, I have to give it credit for it just working. So it did that. But as I'm playing the game, it feels like I've played it before, and that I think is its biggest problem right now. And you know what? As I was playing the game, I thought about how in the hero shooter world specifically, where they decided to exist with this game, you gotta stand out in some way. And you know what? I think the biggest missed opportunity here is, Ryan, is that they have an opportunity for this game to stand out considerably, and they didn't take it. And I feel like that could have been a hero shooter with PlayStation IP characters. I
Interesting.
I'm just trying to think of ways to make this different for them, and almost like a PlayStation All-Stars, but like in the hero shooter. So and they all play differently. That's the cool thing about hero shooters. They can be asymmetric, so you can do some weird stuff with it. And that at least so Marvel Rivals, right? That went into open was like an open closed beta. You have to like
I think it
email
was
and then they
it was a
give you
closed
access
network
to.
test, I think.
Yeah, and then on Steam, their test was 50,000 players concurrent. And all I'm thinking immediately is people are probably playing this because it's Marvel characters because they're well known. Whenever a movie comes out, there's probably gonna be hype around a game like that that you can just download and play. So on the flip side with PlayStation, if this had characters that were well known and I mean fit up perfectly with PlayStation like that, right? It would have, I think, just given it a better starting point is what I'll say. Because this thing is just behind the eight ball immediately against Overwatch. And I mean, people call it Guardians of the Galaxy Light because of some of the character models. Can you imagine if you're running around and you have representation from like The Last of Us and then Parappa the Rapper and you got a little Astrobot running
Okay,
around?
hold on, hold on. You're proposing a reskin, so the two characters you start off with here, you, for Parappa's second.
Yeah, sure.
Not Nathan Hale or like Colonel Raddick, contextually a first person shooter PlayStation IP. No, you want Parappa out there.
Yeah, I say get weird with it, man. Do some weird stuff. You like throw microphones at people or something?
It, that's an interesting idea. The thing is, if that's what this game was, because the gameplay's still a problem though, right? It's not like you said it's fine, but it doesn't stand out.
Doesn't stand out. No,
Yeah. So
no.
there's that, but then it's a matter of if Sony did this and like there's already enough live service bitching as is, I feel like it'd just be a nightmare of people complaining like this is not what we wanted, you know?
Yeah. But can you imagine if so they hype it up with cutscenes, and that's their big thing right now. We're gonna change up the hero shooter game by having cutscenes that are high quality and they introduce you to the characters. You learn about the backstory. I'd be so much more interested to log in if I'm seeing these weird crossovers on screen with cutscenes and stuff. That would be so fun. It kind of brings back memories of that commercial where they're at the bar and they're putting the pictures up on the wall and they have all
The
that was
the
cool though,
Michael
right?
the Michael
Yeah, because you
trailer.
see all the different characters from these different games kind of interact with each other a little bit. You know, you have like Sackboy, they have like Sweet Tooth and Twisted Metal next to each other. So that is a cool thing to see. And I kind of feel like it would have at least, I will tell you this, if that was the game, I think it would have been more than 2,300 concurrent players for the open beta or closed beta or whatever, open beta.
Well, it's a low bar, so I would
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I,
it's like that was on PlayStation All Stars, like the little interstitial, like arcade moments
mhm.
where you have like Kratos taking up blades of chaos to Sweet Tooth's ice cream cone. You remember that cutscene? I always think about that one. It's like near the end, right before Polygon Man, and Sweet Tooth is just admiring this ice cream cone like it's God's gift to humanity. Oh, like an ice cream cone. So, and then Kratos just knocks it off. He's like, "Oh, what the fuck, man?"
Can you
It,
imagine if you had
it-
like the blades of chaos, you launch them forward in this hero shooters? I don't know. That there was so many
it's
cool things they
yeah.
could have done with that. And I think PlayStation fans who I will say this, I do see we see resistance to the live service genre from PlayStation heavy PlayStation fans who are really into obviously the narrative single player experiences. So to me, if you can kind of blend the two, and they did it with PlayStation All Stars, but here with this hero shooter concept, I think it would have been more interesting. I know it would have been more interesting. I'll just say that it definitely would have been.
Yeah.
So it's Concord. I just don't. I mean, I played the different characters. There are like two or three that I liked. There's one person that pyro. She's like a pyromancer and she throws fire everywhere, which is cool. One person named Star Child that does look like they're straight out of Guardians of the Galaxy. I played as them quite a bit. They're kind of like the medium tanks, sort of. But otherwise, I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you the names of some of these people. Otherwise, it's just not. It just does not stand out. And I think this game is in massive trouble right now. I don't see how this thing is going to all of a sudden get turned around when they ask for $40 for the game.
Well, that's a good point to jump into this. So I'm not sure if you saw this really interesting interview. It's Steve Sinclair, the CEO of Digital Extremes, and that's the
Mhm.
developer behind Warframe. So they were speaking with VGC, and they gave this comment during the same week that this was all going down, basically with like the very low player count and also Marvel rivals. So I'm going to read this quote here where they're talking about live service support from third parties, and they say, and I quote here, they think the release is make or break, and it's not. They have a financial way to be persistent, and they never do it. It comes out, doesn't work, and they throw it away, which I think a lot of publishers do. But the caveat here is that Sony, even though they don't have a lot of live service, experience, that's kind of the whole point of why they're doing this. Thus far, though, Destruction All Stars, which is a complete failure, is still up. It's working. It had a
Mhm.
full year of post-launch support. So, I mean, I feel like at the very minimum, they're not going to just throw this game away. Certainly so,
Right.
because they acquired the studio. But I'm still very curious as to what they do when this game clearly doesn't ship and like is a commercial success. So it's like, how long until it goes free? How long until they pull some kind of demand trigger, or
Here's
what's the roadmap?
I mean, I guess the issue would be here is that they own Firewalk. They bought them. So it's not like, oh, we contracted it out. You know what? It didn't work. You're gonna go away now, and we'll just kind of skeleton crew this thing for a year or two, or just leave the servers up, and that's what it is. That's it. Firewalk is not a they're not a cheap studio to keep around. I can't imagine they are. They're in California. They have some high level talent there that doesn't come cheap in this industry right now. So if you have a game that has, I mean, I'm going to tell you now, these Steam numbers, if it hits 1,000 concurrent players when they start asking for money, I would be shocked. I if we see numbers like it's below 1,000 people playing, you're gonna have a hard time finding matches. Uh, then if you're Sony, you're like, okay, we are badly losing money on this thing. What do we do?
Yeah.
I feel like you pull the ripcord, this thing goes into PlayStation Plus Elite like pretty quick, and you just got to try to get people on board, because then you have some pretty good. I mean, again, pretty expensive talent working on a game that's not generating much money and no one's really playing. You feel like they could be doing anything else at that point. So that's my only thing there is, how long would you have them work on that and just keep throwing money at the situation until you go, this just isn't going to work? Because we saw Sega cancel Hyenas right before it came out, because they must have had their own focus group testing where they're like, this thing is not working, and then they laid off a bunch of people from like the studios that were working on it. They're like, we tried. The fact that they built that game completely, not a cheap game, and they canceled it before it came out. I mean, that's kind of the environment we're in right now. And Concord, for better or worse, they are going to push that thing out the door. Some people have called for it to be delayed. There's no point in it being delayed. There's 0 point. The game works. It's functional. They had 16 heroes ready to roll. They're not going to do a battle pass because they believe it's content complete just about at launch. You're just pushing it out. That's it.
That's the other angle of it. Is that it's hard to delay the game when not only is the package complete for coming out in August, but it's like
Mhm.
there's already a lot of stuff in motion right now for what is that first year roadmap. Like,
Mhm.
that's what they outline, is that there's what they say, there's no battle pass, excuse me, no battle pass, obviously, new progression rewards. So there's all these customizable things you can unlock, and clearly they're going to keep doing that because the whole model right now is that they're going to sell it to you.
Yep.
The thing is, though, I don't know if you can put this game on Plus. I feel like it has to be straight up free, because how does that solve the abysmal PC player base? On PlayStation 5, I believe it's
That's
still by
true.
default, it's all, console to console. There's no crossplay enabled. So you have to help that PC user base at the same time. But going free to play dramatically changes how you monetize this game.
Yeah, it
I just
does.
don't see a
Yeah.
I don't see a very good I mean, hot take here. I don't think this is gonna I don't think this is gonna pan out all that well.
Well, here, I mean, for them, they at least had Helldivers 2 do really well, so not every live service game was going to hit. And this game wouldn't even out Helldivers 2. That game just did so much better than anyone thought that I think they could have 2 live service games fail and it would even out. So I think they'd be okay with this. I'd be a little more interested in what happens with Firewalk, because Sony bought them when they saw this game and it was progressing, and I is that a would you count that as a Jim Ryan move then? Herman Hulst
It's
move?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, the thing is, Herman's the one that was evaluating the studio, because he's the one that initially, I don't know exactly how this played out, obviously, but what we do know is that Herman played the game back in 2018, and the game was already in development for a little bit prior to that. Then Sony stepping in, evaluating the studio. This kind of goes into how Sony used to acquire studios before, which is they
Mm.
almost always were only picking up studios that they've worked with prior as sort of a second party long term partner. But they bought up all of them. So it's like the new way Sony's been acquiring studios is kind of getting in the ground floor and investing in new talent. So I mean, in that sense, I wouldn't have said that was a bad move, but it's also like it's just super risky, right? It's just so tough as like especially somebody like Herman where it's it's like talent seeking or talent
Right.
evaluation. This is what Shuhei did too at the time. Like this kind of goes back to like I always think about this, which is like Shuhei played Demon Souls before it came out and like before I think that was like during the early development cycle of that game and he hated it. He said he hated it.
He had God of
It's
War too, though.
yeah, it's like it comes down to personal preference. Like one person might have the final say on like, okay, we're gonna bankroll this game, but it's like it's just that's risky. Investing in live service is risky. Investing in new IP is risky. So I wouldn't really put it past him for doing this, but it's just like it looked like it was a bad call. There's only so much you can do.
I mean, that's gonna be a very costly mistake if Concord doesn't have some massive turnaround, because I can't imagine this game was cheap to make. It does not look cheap. It looks high quality. And when you look at the list of people, Bungie people, I mean, old Halo people were working there, Call of Duty people, Destiny people. It's like veterans working on this stuff, and everything around like the mechanics, I think are fine. The movement's a little slow, but they can like those are things they can touch up. It's not a huge deal with that for the movement and even some of the shooting mechanics. I feel like the weapons could use a bit of a boost because the more I played, the more I did go, this is taking a while to kill certain classes, and some don't even have some of these classes not even worth playing as some of the heroes, and you never see people play as them. They just get overrun every time. And the tanks were super slow. I just played as the Pyromancer or Star Child. Those are the two I went back and forth between. But like the weapons were kind of boring to use. The abilities at times were cool. Like I said, the Pyromancer was the fun character to be because they're just blasting fire everywhere. Their crossbow was kind of cool, like the one-shot crossbow that has an explosive end to it. When I look at the game, visually speaking, it was good too. But their big push, the thing that's supposed to separate them, is that their characters are supposed to be interesting and the world they're building is supposed to be interesting, but it's not. So that's kind of a problem there. It wouldn't be a bad idea for them to also build out maybe some PvE elements. I know they really want this to be that asymmetric hero shooter PvP. PvE stuff wouldn't be a terrible idea, just to do something a little different to throw in there. But if that's not part of the roadmap now, has not happening for a while. I feel like that's just set up as it is, and I think they're just going to roll with this thing. But what happens if we go on Steam one day and there's 20 people playing? What do you do then? You can't fill out a lobby.
What's scary is that sounds like a very possible thing that's going to happen shortly after launch.
What if
It's
Destruction All Stars is more popular in this game? What do we do?
it's fine. I haven't checked into. I gotta boot up Destruction All. See what's going on in that game.
I played Destruction All Stars in 2024. Here's what happened.
Here's what happened. I found people. It's kind of crazy when you can do PS5 online in 2024. Who's still playing and why? All right. Well, let's touch on this at least. A much more successful live service game. Helldivers 2 has got a big update coming out very soon. The escalation of freedom. Did you see this, John?
I saw some of it. Yeah, with the update. I have not looked into Helldivers 2 in a little while now.
Looks like this is like the first big content drop. So I just thought it was worth pointing out for those that like maybe got their fill when the game came out, and everybody puts it down.
This is what we said last time though, with these live service games where you see the stuff pop up that's like 90% dropped off. It's like, yeah, but you have to wait until the next update comes out, big content update, to see what kind of effect that has. And people seem very excited about this. So I think you're going to see the numbers tick back up.
I actually completely forgot about that conversation. You're right. So yeah, this is the big update. So handful of stuff. There's like a new hard setting, which is like game's already a pain in the ass. So
It,
now
it,
it's
some of those robots take forever to kill.
yeah, they've got like a new artillery thing. Like they've got like tanks that can just shoot you from a distance. There's also like a charger enemy and this like giant tentacle monster. It's so cool. If I had more free time, I think I would love this game.
Mm.
There's like big outposts you can like now storm as well. So that's coming out very soon, August 6th. Let's move
I spent
on
my
to
weekend playing Concord instead.
yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. Great timing there.
All right, do
Uh,
you think the controller? Do you think people are gonna pick up that controller?
you know what? I've seen people say like they don't care for the game, but like they just like the controller.
It's because they didn't put the logo anywhere on the controller. You could just be like, this is the cool special
Oh,
edition,
it's on the back.
unbranded. Oh, is it
It's
really? Oh,
it's underneath. Yeah,
man, they messed it up. You should have just left that off there.
that looks
Yeah, all right.
cool.
I think the front of it looks. I think it looks fine. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's funny because if they left that logo off, I think it would have had a shot. I mean, at least they didn't put it right on the front touchpad. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Get away with it.
All right, let's talk about well, since we're talking about DualSense, let's just move right into like well, this would be China Joy, but the most
Mhm.
exciting China Joy news would
Yep.
be Astrobot. Astrobot first did get a DualSense as well.
Yes.
That controller, how are we feeling about that one?
That thing looks incredible. I am buying that immediately. Some people were confused on the eyes. Some people thought it was like a screen that lights up. Like, no, it's just the touchpad, and they just put blue paint on there. Like it looks cool. Like the touchpad part. That one might be. You might look at that and go, did they need to do it? I think it looks great there though. But man, the white and blue, like it's all white on the bottom. Even the analog sticks are. Some people were wondering if that's a good idea because it's going to show wear
Yeah,
and tear.
it's
But
not going to be pretty, dude. That's going to get gross.
but it's so unique to have that, like, than any other controller. It's like all white with the thumbsticks. I think it looks awesome, and the
It
blue
looks
accents on the sides.
It looks clean, but I'll tell you, it looks the kind of clean where it's like, okay, so that's going to cost me $85 to not play it.
Are
That's
you? That's the controller where you put up on the side. You're like,
yeah,
you
you
just look
can't
at it.
play
You're
with
like, all
that
right,
thing.
cool.
It
That's
looks
it. You just
nice
put it up
though.
there.
It
Are
looks
you gonna take
nice.
it out of the package, or are you gonna leave it in the package?
Well, you got to take it out, John. You got to display
Okay,
it.
good. Okay, good.
Now, how
I have
about
my
that game?
control. Look, I'll put it right here. Controller display. Got them right there. Got the
Yeah,
light
put it in
and
the back
everything.
right there.
Gonna go right there. Right there. I use my DualSense Edge anyway. That's usually what I play with all the time. So
Ironically, yeah, when these like, because now we've got a handful of like special DualSense options or different
Mhm.
colorways, but it's like, well, I've got the Edge, and that's a $200 pro style control. Like I'm gonna main that every time I play.
Yep.
So ironically, like I'm not ever gonna use like a standard DualSense probably ever again.
I do think the
But
Spider-Man one. I have the Spider-Man one in the package, and we use that sometimes for like
okay,
multiplayer stuff.
yeah, but if
But
it's two
the
player,
yeah. But like the DualSense Edges, I go to that like first right away. That's the number one.
yeah.
And then number two is the black DualSense, and then I have the Spider-Man one for 3.
Hmm. Well, how about the Astrobot gameplay then? We did get some new gameplay.
8 minutes of
Yeah,
gameplay at China Joy off screen.
I think there's a direct capture floating out there.
Is there? I saw the off screen one, but the direct capture.
Yeah.
I'll look for that too. I saw off screen. I got the gist of what they were playing, and it. I will say this: it caught me a little off guard because the opening part, where the off screen footage that I saw showed the beginning where Astro's flying in on the controller and jumps off and runs through that part of the level. That part of the level only lasted a couple minutes, and then the boss shows up. Big octopus fight. Okay, that you saw that too.
Well, they said 80 levels, and
Yeah, but like,
they
but
also said like they're not gonna like bloat the game out basically. Like it's gonna be
yeah,
like if you gold path it, it's gonna be like a 10-hour game basically is what they said, 10 to 15.
but but what I noticed, Ryan, is that boss was actually like half the level because not necessarily just the fight and the length of time, but as they were going through, so they get through the standard, they did some platforming, they get the gloves where they kind of swing around, they're fighting enemies. The octopus shows up that you're fighting, and you do the initial thing where you're running around, you're punching it, and then it jumps backwards and it puts an entire obstacle course in front of you again while it's in the background, kind of like moving around and shooting stuff. So you're then going through a whole level as part of the boss battle. That could be awesome. Because remember, we saw like the snake, which that could be a whole thing where maybe it backs away and it slithers around while you're trying to do the obstacle. Like I'm thinking of different things they're going to do where they integrate the bosses more into the levels. I thought it was going to be a situation of you go through a standard level, some kind of mechanic or something is introduced and you use that to get through. And then you fight the boss in like a predetermined arena. I like the idea of these bosses having multiple stages where they have platforming involved with it. That could be cool. And that's the part that caught me off guard a little bit. Was that they showed the overworld, the map too.
Hmm.
You saw that where you're flying around space. There was a lot going on there. There were a lot of planets to go to.
Yeah.
So man, the game looks good.
Did you see the speed run clip? There was
I
a
didn't see
speed run.
I didn't see that. No. Did someone just, like, roll through a level real quick?
There was like a what? There's like I guess going to be those like optional like extra. I don't want to say
Mhm.
extra hard, but like more difficult levels where it's like you can either speed run them or at the very least when you get to the end of them, that's when you rescue one of the VIP bots. Which the one that we got or the one that I saw was Jack and Daxter. So Jack got
Oh,
rescued,
I
and
see
it
this
was
direct capture one right now. I see it.
yeah. The speed run though, speed run
Oh,
one
the blue
though
soccer.
was really cool because it's just so you can tell how it would be a bit more challenging with how there's like just only like a few platforms that you can really get to, and you kind of have to land perfectly and make sure you also time your hover where you're going to be blowing up the enemy below you because they're eating up the entire platform. And I don't know. I feel like there's just so much that can be said. It's such a colorful game. Look at it,
It's
man.
very bright. It's very I mean, we
It's
saw the
yeah.
playroom, but, like, these parts have been very, very bright so far. They showed him playing soccer a minute ago in here.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a ladder too. This
I
this looks
think
way better than the stuff I was watching, the off-screen stuff. Way
I
better.
I hope that there's like so much just mechanical things that they're not showing just yet because I believe a good portion of this is also like what we already what a lot of the press had hands-on time with anyway, so they might just be carting around the same the same play test right now. But I would hope that mechanically there's a lot more that they're not showing off just yet, which there seemingly is. They said there's like 15 something like new abilities that Astro is going to have.
Did they show the board where these puzzles are going yet, these pieces? Because remember with Playroom, we had an entire, like, puzzle wall that we had to finish out?
Yeah, I
I didn't see that yet. If they
don't
had, like, the
know
whole
if
room.
that's been outlined just yet,
Oh,
but
we have to have a room, right, where we have all of our controllers and the stuff we collect. They gotta give us that. We should have, like, home base.
well, it's funny. The creative director Nicholas Duche did outline that like it's not necessarily going like it's going to be there's going to be PlayStation lineage and things like that in there, but it's still going to be like an original Astro story. So
Mhm.
I would assume that it's not going to be like a PlayStation Labo again, but it could be building out something,
I
some
like
kind
the
of
idea of
new.
Astro having a little home. That would be cool, like a little house you go to. "Oh,
Be
this guy
be
rich
cool if
today."
Astro had real estate.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Oh, cool. So this should be the end of the level. Okay, so here's the overworld or the
Yeah.
space part where you gotta drive around. So you got like a center. Oh, look, there's center area right there. All the coins went to
Hmm.
that little planet there. I wonder if that's like maybe it just has a planet. Oh man,
Astro
that's
has his own
cool.
planet.
Yeah, look at all the stuff happening. Oh, okay, they went away. But that looks good. I'm
Mhm.
excited for this. That is one of my most anticipated games of the year right now. Is Astrobot.
Seems like a lot of people are, and I am here for it. I am loving how much attention this game's getting. So while I'm still not like even I'll be the one to say like I like let's not call it game of the year just yet. Let's
Oh
let's
yeah,
have it come out first before we start tossing that around. But the fact that so many people are willing to say that this quickly, like it's cool that like a game like this, a 3D platformer, colorful,
yeah.
a mid-sized budget, like I'm so thrilled that we're seeing that right
It
now.
feels like a game straight out of like that PS3 era, like kind of the direction of it. Maybe that's why. Maybe there's some like feeling of nostalgia for people too, like old PlayStation making this. Hmm.
I mean, yeah, it has undertones like that for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. Cameos and stuff that'll appear in it. You said you already saw Jack
Oh, I
involved,
saw
so
Jack big time, buddy.
yeah, we just had
Green
Ratchet
hair and
there.
all.
Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. Man, that's gonna be fun. That'll be a fun week when that comes out. September 6th.
So
Controller game. Yeah.
yeah, so we had that at China Joy, which was kind of the highlight. But there was other
Mhm,
stuff at China Joy, namely the China Hero Project, which is Sony's incubation program. So they've got another wave of titles coming out of that.
mhm.
Which
Was there
first
anything that
off,
stood
this
out to you?
Yeah, well, so this wasn't a China Hero game, but it was confirmed, which is Wuthering Waves, which is like another PC mobile gotcha game. So it's like
Well,
I don't know if you keep up with that, but like this console's got so many now. It's like the home for like these kind of premium cross-play style gotcha games. So that one's coming to PlayStation 5 now. But the actual China Hero games, I think there's only three confirmed, which would be Project Jin Yue. That's an action RPG that focuses on the late Ming Dynasty. There's Unending Dawn. That looks like more of an action RPG. If you watch gameplay of that, it looks Souls-like. I don't know if it actually does, play like that, but it appears like it's certainly inspired by Souls games. Just more anime looking, anime style, basically. And then Lu Lan was announced as well. That's a single player action adventure game. And at the time that I looked into this, there was no footage just yet, but I think there is now. And we also got new footage of Lost Soul Aside, which we didn't think that game was going to show up, but then then they finally confirmed like 2 days before or something, like, oh yeah, we're going to be there. So now there's gameplay for that too.
Still no release date on it.
Yeah, that's a little strange because the game it's supposed to come out this year. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen if they're still not ready
Nah.
to talk about that just yet.
I
But
mean, I could see that. That way, it wouldn't shock me if that appeared in their next showcase or like bigger event, and had a release date maybe for first half of next year at this rate. I mean, it's just we're kind of getting down. We're getting up against it now into August. Like it's you gotta announce it now and it comes out next month or something. I feel like that game is shaping up to look like a pretty big release right now. Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff happening there. It looks higher quality, and what they first showed it in like 2016 or something. So it's been in development for a while. That seems like one they might have a little bit of a marketing run up for.
yeah, I'd imagine if there's ever a time where they're going to have a release date for it, it might show up in like at least a state of play,
Mhm.
depending on what Sony decides to do. But yeah, China Joy had a lot of new games come out or that we learned about. Always good to see that. Now let's move on to a lot of PlayStation 5 Pro stuff going on these past few weeks. We're getting close to when Sony should probably be getting to, say something official about this thing. But the one little thing we noticed immediately was that source code that was spotted in No Man's Sky's big update. So somebody data mined the update for No Man's Sky, and there's a Trinity preset label in there now, which basically implies the game's going to get PlayStation 5 Pro support.
Mhm.
Looking at the source code, that particular setting has like one or two like visual settings changed from ultra to high, or high to ultra, I should say. And then the dynamic res value was changed from zero point 0.6 to zero point 0.8. It's like a slight bump there. Nothing crazy. But like that's a game that like in plain view we see it's got PlayStation 5 Pro support. So there's that.
So, to my understanding, the current PlayStation SDK just has that in there. So, actually, there's a bunch of games right now that are in development that are going to have that popping up like in the code. So this when I saw it pop up, I was like, okay, that's it's good to finally see it like there in these newer builds of the updates. But that is fairly common right now, to my understanding, behind the scenes, having this Trinity entry in the SDK. And it seems like from hearing that this is something that a lot of them are doing right now. So it kind of makes me feel like we're getting. See, I still think Sony's going to announce this thing in September and launch it in November.
Yeah, well,
That's kind of my
that's what it should
belief.
be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to surprise it. I mean, I guess they could. They could say, "Hey, they could tell us about in August or something." We're close. Like we're probably like 6 weeks away from this thing being officially announced or referenced in some way, and then it just come out a month or two before the holiday, like before Christmas. So, but this, what I did see, I will tell you this: what I saw in that code though was, I mean, it looked like it was a 50% bump to it was dynamic resolution, so they kind of raised the floor 50%. But people were noticing that there wasn't any reference to their what is it PSSR, their upscaling technology they're going to use with AI upscaling. People mentioned that they didn't see that in there, and that's something that should be applied. So that was a little strange to not see that included.
Well, I would see my thing is almost certainly that's going to be first party. this is an established ongoing third party game, so it's like I'm not even sure if they like had access to you know that SDK feature whenever it's like wherever the SDK actually is right now for actually utilizing PSSR, if third parties can start utilizing it right now, or
Mhm.
whatever whatever the situation is. I would assume for what is an open world game that's already got a pretty heavy foundation of source code, they're looking to just do minimal updates, and it's also like a
Right.
CPU bound game because it's open world. So I don't know. I looked at No Man's Sky and I'm like, okay, that's an example, not a great example given they're not doing anything too crazy, but PSSR, I would assume it's like going to be primarily first parties initially. They're going to use that, especially
That makes
considering
sense.
they're the ones that had access to this hardware before anybody else. Third
Yeah.
parties were the very last ones that got access to the dev kit. So
Yeah, so it's to my understanding, a lot of the people using SDK now that's been like opened up to completely. So people will probably start finding more and more references to Trinity and updates like these. This was a sizable update though for No Man's Sky. I think it was like 5.0 or something. And I did fire it up and start up a new run, if you will, in No Man's Sky. And that game has taken some significant leaps forward. I will say it's been a long time since I've played No Man's Sky. Like I'm not the No Man's Sky expert or anything. But it when I played it, because remember it came out on the PS4 as like the console exclusive thing that they released. It came out on PC as well. But that thing got destroyed when it released, and they have ever since built this thing up to now. You turn it on, there is an entire quest line you follow that walks you through everything. It throws you on a random planet that could be toxic or it could be super hot or cold, and you have to sort of figure out that. But it walks through step by step through it. And they have so much stuff happening now. Like I left, and within the first hour, I'm on a space station, and you try to figure out the language of these different aliens. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Final Fantasy X with the Albed, where you're trying to figure out their language and you find pieces of their language, and it starts to fill in the dialogue boxes. Is like that, and that it's interesting. I think I'm gonna keep following through with this, and I might come back with a video after like 10 or 15 hours. No Man's Sky. I
just
Hey, it's been a while. It's been gosh, when did that game come out? Was that 2014 or something? 2015? When was that?
I want to say 2016 because
2016. So 8 years later.
I
Eight
think
years now.
I got to the game after one of their very big updates in 2018 or 19. It was like I got it a few years after it came out when like the reception to it was like a lot more positive. I think it was 2016 when the game came out.
They
But
did a
yeah,
lot
it's
of graphical updates though with this update. So when I see that with the resolution bump for we'll say the PS5 Pro, it's actually pretty substantial because they're doing a lot with even like weather effects, volumetric clouds, like the water effects will actually stir up based on what's happening on the planet with storms and stuff. There's a lot happening in this game now. So seeing that resolution bump, while people looked at it and said, "Well, it's still not true 4K." I don't know how I don't know how much the PS5 Pro really needs to have true 4K if they really are banking on this advanced AI upscaling technique. They might not even need that, to be honest. Like going from this like mid-range 1440p 4K up to 4K, if they can get 10 extra frames per second out of it, I feel like most of the developers are going to opt for that because you're just not going to tell the difference.
That's kind of the accepted norm on PC nowadays anyway. Most people don't want to, go for native 4K when you've got options
1440p
between
is fine.
AMD and
Yeah.
Nvidia. So that's why it's weird. It's like it's a good example to like know, okay, this game was data mined. There's a Trinity preset already in this particular game. I don't know if it's a great example though of like what exactly the pro is going to offer, even though
No.
we seemingly already know a good portion considering all the dev material already leaked out. But this kind of goes into like the one report that came out from Tom Warren writing for Insider Gaming, which that was like a little thing because I guess he had sent out a tweet saying, "Oh, if it comes out this year," responding to somebody, and people freaked out. So he had to put
Yep.
out this report saying, "Oh, it's as far as I know, it's still coming out." But he did have a line in there that said, according to sources he spoke to, that apparently they're still apprehensive about if it will come out this year. He says due to a limited number of first-party games that will use its features, which is a little strange. I mean, you would assume they've got at least a handful of like existing titles that are going to get patched for it. I don't know if he's
Yeah.
referring to like new games coming out because, like, again, that's not really what this holiday season is going to be. Um, but it just depends on like it depends on where the SDK was, and obviously that time delta of when studios can like also submit for like the certification of that patch to then go
Right.
live on PSN. So it's like that's why like No Man's Sky is probably like that's one example. As you said, there's probably a handful of others we're going to see very soon. Like games probably already like have this patch sent out and waiting for Sony to accept it and let it go live on PSN if they are supporting PS5 Pro. If we assume it's going to launch in November, like this stuff's absolutely in motion.
I mean, let's be real. So the PS5 Pro, what do we think is going to sell the most PS5 Pro systems? Just realistically, Ghost of Tsushima 2, a God of War spinoff, we'll say, a new Naughty Dog IP, um, anything like that, or Grand Theft Auto 6. Let's
That's
just be real. It needs to be there for Grand Theft Auto 6. You're good. That's it. If it's there and Grand Theft Auto 6 is there, you're gonna sell a ton of them.
well, it's I guess it depends on when you're asking this though too. Like do you like initially when the thing like comes out like this year in November or in 2025 when we have GTA 6, when we have Tsushima 2.
I think you have the PS5 Pro out there, just that you could put it out this year, just get things rolling with it, and then have the marketing the entire time for GTA 6's rollout to have the PS5 Pro next to it the whole time. I mean, it's not going to be on PC on day one. It'll be on the Xbox Series S, sure, and that's going to have some kind of experience. We'll see because there's limitations developers working with.
It's
We know, we understand it at this point.
it'll play.
But let's just say they roll in and they're like, hey, it's upscaled to 4K, but at 60 frames per second on GTA 6. I mean,
There's still a serious doubt that it will be 60 on
but that's the
Series
best
S.
part. If they're able to figure it out, I mean, dude, come on, that's gonna shock a lot of people, and it's gonna drive people to upgrade their console. Like, so we already know that that Sony said it. Half the user base appears to still be on the PS4. That's older data, but still, it's within a few months. GTA 6 is the game that you can look to out of everything and go, that's probably going to have the most effect on getting people to upgrade their system. College football recently had a similar effect. GTA 6 is like tenfold of that. Let's be real. That's going to be probably the biggest launch we've ever seen in gaming history. And if you can position that next generation upgraded PS5 Pro next to it, even if it's $600, there's probably a chance people are going to be like, well, I'm going to get this for GTA Online and that's all I'm going to play for the next few years. I want to have the best experience. I'll get that PS5 Pro. And then all they have to do is go out and convince the friend who wants to upgrade to then just buy a PS5. Like they might not even want the Pro, but then, okay, I'll get the PS5. And that's kind of the way I think that Sony, it sounds weird to jumpstart the generation, but like GTA 6 is going to, there'll be a lot of momentum for console sales with GTA 6 hits.
Hmm. I don't know. I mean, the whole halfway thing makes sense just given that's how far along we are.
Mm.
It's like it wouldn't if it was any more, I mean, then that would imply that we're further along in the life cycle. I don't know. It just seems like that halfway point still that would have happened no matter what. But I mean, like you said, there's no doubt in my mind. Like GTA 6 is going to force a lot of people to finally upgrade. I'm
It
not
sounds
as
weird to upgrade year 5, but like that's kind of where we are.
well. Every cycle does that though. Every cycle, people will upgrade on year 5 when it makes sense for them.
Mm.
Although I'm not as convinced they would just jump right to the pro. The pro is still a very this thing is going to be low volume. Like it's going to be like for enthusiasts. Like I almost would safely guess that like 2 out of like every 5 sold is going to be to somebody that already has a PS5
Oh
because they
yeah,
just want
I would say so. They'll trade
yeah
theirs in, get the new one, pay the difference or whatever. Most likely, at places like GameStop.
and
Or maybe they just buy the Pro and put the PS5 in like another room or something. But
yeah
you're right. It's going to be PS5 owner laterally, then just goes to PS5 Pro.
and that metric is like even lower when you consider like just overall how many PS5s they sold, how many PS5s they sell. Like the
Mm,
PS4 metric that we had was like 1 in every 5 PS4 sold was a Pro.
yep.
So if it's like, oh, if that's the same case here, like so out of every 10 consoles that are sold, that means 2 might be a pro model. And then of those two, like there's a decent chance that somebody that already has a PlayStation 5. So it's just going to be a, very, very low volume system.
I do see a lot of people whenever the Pro comes up in conversation in comments who are like, I don't really need a Pro necessarily. That seems to be more so now than I remember it being with the PS4 Pro. And maybe that's just because the PS4 did kind of show its age since it couldn't do 4K, right? Like in games. I know they pushed updates for HDR and stuff like that for even the launch model PS4. But now we have 4K system going to better 4K, and man, that 8K just did not catch on. If 8K was big, let's say 8K caught on like 4K did back then, the PS5 Pro would, I think, just be an easier sell. It's going to be a bit harder. You're right. It's more enthusiast grade this time, I think.
Well, that's a good segue into our next story, which is a rumor about PS5
Mm,
Pro. So the theory here is that this console is going to have a lot of like next generation RDNA 4 features.
mhm,
This comes from that one Twitter account at Kepler_L2, who have seemingly been privy to like the AMD roadmap. So like they're the one source that we have, but allegedly this thing is going to, be supporting a good portion of our DNA 4 features. That being like what they list off here: double ray tracing, intersect engine, RT instance node transform, 64B RT node, ray tracing, tri-pair optimization, just a bunch of like GPU features for ray tracing, basically,
mhm.
for AMD's next roadmap for their microarchitecture. PS5 right now is basically like an RDNA 2 machine. And some people argue it's like 1.5 or 2.5 but like Sony's a console manufacturer. They just work directly with AMD. They'll cherry pick GPU features. So it's really kind of splitting hairs on exactly what RDNA it's using. But the theory here is that Sony is buying up a lot of our DNA 4 features for this console, which that would be like a sort of use case for this console, right? Like how many people are going to feel inclined to buy a PlayStation 5 Pro if we're simply talking about PSSR? Well, maybe the other aspect is that they're going to be investing more into making sure this thing has ray tracing features baked in than we otherwise would have thought, which does kind of go back to the documentation that was leaked out, which is, if a developer wants to get a PS5 Pro label on their game, it has to have like one of these enhancements, which a lot of the
Right.
enhancements was, oh, maybe the frame rate's the same, but you add RT. Maybe resolution's the same, but you add RT. Like if you add RT, you're going to get a PS5 Pro enhancement label, which
That'll
it's
upsell it.
yeah, that's a valuable thing to a developer, and that's the compromise right now, right? I mean, whether this rumor is true or false, I mean, it's simply a matter of like right now, RT has taken a huge backseat on console because it's like a pretty big resource hog. Like
It
more
is.
often than not, if you want ray tracing on PlayStation 5, there's only a handful of games that'll offer it for like actual like straight up reflections if they're not using RT in some other way that most people don't recognize. Like Returnal has RT, but they use it for like global illumination or something. Most people
Mhm.
don't pick up on that. But it's like, Spider-Man, one of the very few games where there's like an RT 60 mode. But most games, it's like if they have RT, it's in the 30. And
Right.
people aren't picking the 30 mode, right? So it's like, would that be a great use case? Is that, hey, we've got a lot of RT hardware baked onto this console, and so now studios can much more easily integrate ray tracing into higher frame rate modes, and so people can actually benefit from it that way.
I think first of all, I think the rumors around RDNA 4 being included with this PS5 Pro, I think that makes total sense because with the PS4 Pro, they tapped AMD to get advanced features for Polaris and they baked that into the PS4 Pro. I remember that was a big talking point when it came out. It's like, wow, it has advanced technology beyond what you have in AMD's current offering for chips, so in your GPUs. So this makes sense to me. It's just Sony works very closely with AMD and they know what they want. If that's the case, we want ray tracing. How do we do it? Well, we're working on this, and Mark Cerny gets in there. They cut him off about the ears, and he talks about ray tracing, and there we go. Now we're figuring it out. And you know what? I will say this: if ray tracing becomes, it's not gonna be free. It's still gonna there's gonna be resources involved. But if it has hardware that is integrated in to specifically deal with ray tracing on that level, to where okay, we can turn it on and we can still have upscaled 4K and 60. And it's not the upscaled 4K where everything looks shimmery and you're like, oh, okay, this is very clearly lower than like you would expect for the resolution on a PS5. I do think ray tracing could actually make some pretty serious differences in games. And I'm not gonna say take it to the next level in terms of visuals, but add a lot to it to where you can go, okay, I understand why ray tracing had that hype behind it, because now I'm not looking at half the frame rate in order to get there. That's always the thing. It's like, ray tracing it can look cool, but those are still shots or video or gameplay shown on a $2,000 video card. Okay. Really, it was fun until we talked about price. PS5 Pro can do it. All right. Now Horizon looks incredible. 60 frames, ray tracing, upscaled 4K. Awesome. Spider-Man, God of War, Returnal, which Returnal, people didn't realize Returnal was rendered at 1080p until they were told that it was rendered at 1080p. Now all of a sudden, maybe it's rendered at 1440 or some weird resolution between that and 4K, and it has ray tracing even beyond, as you mentioned, global illumination. I think there's a lot of value in that then with that PS5 Pro enhanced badge. And I would be curious to even revisit some of these games just to see how they're looking at that, especially with get a nice OLED or something. I think that would be, again, enthusiast, great, yes, but I do think there's some pull there for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I assume that's what they're maybe looking to do. That and just like making sure third parties actually use it, right? That's like the big caveat. Every single time we've got new consoles coming, is everybody comes up with these little, quirks and new features of the hardware or something that's in their UI, and it's like, okay, first party's going to use it, but will third party? In this case, not to say RT is like bespoke to PlayStation, but it's a matter of like, it's just not being utilized
Right.
on console because there's no performance budget for it. So it sounds like in a way they want to make sure that maybe more studios outside of first party are offering ray tracing modes. So if that's the case, I think there is some benefit there. Not sure if that's going to really move the needle for people that are, shouting, "Do we need it?" If you're saying that, you're
Yeah.
probably not buying this thing. But
But that's the thing. You don't have to. If you have a PS5 now and you don't really see the value in it, that's fine. Sony's just
yeah,
stick with the PS5. I mean, in this case, they're doing this a year later than they did with the PS4. They did that 3 years in. We're going 4 years for this one. So,
hmm
even in that sense, if you've been fine this whole time, you'll be fine for probably another 4 years till the next system. So,
yeah, it really is something where like it's just like sell consoles to the same people, and then if you get a new buyer, then that's great too. Obviously,
we're gonna buy it. So,
yeah.
they got us.
Well, John, let's talk about this. More of a third-party news story, but PlayStation owners love their physical games. Capcom showing up here, showing some love for physical video game media, right? So I'm sure you've touched on this on your show, but they so far they've spoken to shareholders saying that they'll still keep releasing physical media for the time being because their customers want it, and that's despite their current software ratio being like 90%, which for this fiscal year they're assuming it's going to get up to like 93%, which I think that number is probably just a little bit skewed in that they still sell a number of games that are digital only. But either way, like obviously a lot of publishers are seeing the same ratio, which is most of their games are being sold digitally. But encouraging to see a very big publisher like Capcom at least saying the here and now we're still going to print physical media.
Shout out to Capcom and their stubbornness. Keep it up. The fact that you mentioned their ratio right now is apparently 90% is a little jarring, but that would count just receipts in general, like sales for games that are digital only, microtransactions, whatever. So
Yeah.
sure, a vast majority of their money is coming from digital sales, but that's everyone right now because microtransactions make up so much of the industry right now that it does bury the physical receipts that are just out there. Capcom, even at 10%, apparently sees value in that still. But I will say this: there is still, I think, concern at the retail level right now, and that I feel like is what would put physical media in a bit of jeopardy current, like actually getting it to go away. Because if the stores are not seeing that return for their square footage, they'll keep shrinking. I mean, you go to like Walmart or Best Buy now, it is a little sketchy in there, right? You go there like, oh wow, okay, there's only like 3 shelves of physical games. What's going on right now?
Yeah.
And it's been shrinking down. Once games start just even at GameStop, you go to GameStop, like half the thing is pop figures and statues now. It's weird. But once that starts happening, I will say that that's when I'd be a little more concerned around these, because what are they going to ship the games to you? They'd rather just you download the thing. If that the whole point is we're retail facing, we have advertising in stores just by having our games on the shelf, go buy them. That makes sense. But at that point, if you're not going to go out and buy the game, how many people do you think are really going to order online to have physical games shipped in, as opposed to the newer generation now? That'll probably take up 95% plus of the sales force then. It's just
Yeah.
digital. So
Yeah.
that's my concern, is that retail level.
The retail thing's interesting. You know what I always am concerned about is just that, like, this like lives and dies by the platform holders, because they're the only
That too.
manufacturers.
You're right.
Like, like sometimes I see the counterpoint of like, oh, what about, we still have DVDs, we still have Blu-rays, we still have, vinyl and things, but it's like, yeah, well, that's kind of a, you know, you've got third party manufacturers. Anybody can make a Blu-ray player. Anybody can make a, CD player or something. But it's like here, Sony makes PlayStation, Nintendo makes Nintendo hardware, Xbox. Like if they stop doing it, it's over.
Yeah, you're
So it's
right.
like the next machines they have to offer. If they don't offer it, it's done. It doesn't matter if like the ratio still shows that like millions of people are buying discs. It doesn't matter about retail presence at that point. Like my concern is that like somebody just says, "All right, we've had enough. No discs."
There's also the whole thing with manufacturers of the hardware itself, like Blu-ray. Like Phil Spencer mentioned in an interview that, hey, just getting a Blu-ray drive for the number of systems that we're doing, we're talking like Sony. By the end of this generation, we assume they're going to have shipped, we'll just say safely, over 100 million PlayStation 5 systems. That means you found, even if like what do you think the ratio right now is for physical PlayStation 5, with the disc drive and stuff versus digital? What do you think it is? 70-30 or something? Physical versus
It
digital?
at launch it was 80-20,
Okay.
but I think one of the more recent metrics, and that was out of the UK, I want to say, it was closer to like 60-40, which was alarming, because I would have thought that,
We'll go midway, 70-30. You
yeah,
could say
I
that.
would have
Okay.
thought the split would have stayed 80-20 though, but it's definitely getting more even.
So for basic math, we'll just say of 100 million, 70 million Blu-ray drives would have been manufactured, which means you haven't found someone who would have made those. And I will tell you this, when you open up these systems, there are a range of manufacturers they'll tap to try to make these things. And some of that has to do with just availability. And that was back with the PS3 and the 360 and the PS4 and the Xbox One. And it seems like they're less inclined to spend a lot of R&D on that now and just manufacturing, because I mean, it was, at least back then, Blu-ray players were pretty, I mean, they were selling pretty well. People would buy these Blu-ray players to put in their bedrooms or wherever, right? The living room. Now it's a lot of streaming. So you lose that arm of the manufacturing process, those customers. And it's like, are we just making them for game consoles? That kind of it. So that's the other aspect to it. There's a lot of things, unfortunately, right now in this climate, working against the idea of physical media for games, and it's unfortunate to see it happen. It's tough. Now think about all the red boxes that are going away. That's a lot of customer. That's for the amount of red boxes that would have to be filled with movies and stuff. That's a lot of receipts and customers that are going away from just buying, because they have to buy the movies and the DVDs and stuff to put in these red boxes, and now they're going away. So it's a lot of stuff, man. It's working against it. It's tough. It's tough.
It's not encouraging. I'll say that much.
Well, we'll see with Xbox when they go next gen in a couple of years. If there's no disk drive on that thing, start the countdown timer for the industry.
Yeah, well, they would not surprise me at all, but like I'd still like them to do it. But like even
Well, yeah, I
even
mean,
even
Nintendo has
now,
cartridges they don't use, because I guess at least the benefit there is it's Sony and Microsoft doing Blu-ray. Like Nintendo's not involved with that.
yeah.
Then it's just Sony, and it's like, oh, okay, hold on a minute. It's just we're the only ones doing it now, so it's, I don't know if that trend gets set and people are already used to streaming and already used to download their games. It's like, how much longer would we have? PS6, PS7?
I mean, my worry is
Uh,
PlayStation 7. I would safely assume 6 is going to have Blu-rays, but 7, I no clue.
2035. Start the countdown timer.
Yeah, that's so far away.
2035. 2035. By then, the machines may have taken over, so it won't matter.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, it's
Yeah,
great that
we'll be
we won't
good.
have to worry about that.
Yeah. I don't have to worry about the digital era here. The machines will take care of it.
All right, let's move on to these were kind of silly, but like it's still things people are talking about because it's like people are just fiending for news. Concept art appears in a video for PlayStation Studios Malaysia. So there was a video on LinkedIn showing Malaysia's Minister of Digital Business doing a site visit to PlayStation Malaysia Studios, or PS Studios Malaysia, I should say. They're just a support group within SIE, right? Like they have all these various disciplines that support the rest of the first party teams. They don't make their own games. But it was this little video on LinkedIn doing a site visit through the studio. And there's just, times throughout the office where you can see computer screens. And so people are like, oh, well, stop that, pause, zoom in, enhance. What can we see? And what we see is one of them was like obviously from Smite, like it was concept art from Smite, which I think just is because that was the particular artist like art station portfolio or something. But there's like another shot where people are like zooming in on that and it's all crusty and you can barely make out what it is. And people are trying to connect the dots and Charlie Day this into, oh look, this is Blue Point's project. And so did you see this, John? Or
Yes. Yes.
so I don't know where you stand on this. I think this is silly.
I think the thirst is real right now. These people are empty canteen in the middle of a desert, and
I
that
think it's
computer screen is like a bottle of water, right? It is crazy how I mean, part of this, okay, part of this is Sony because they haven't said anything in a minute, right? So it's been a while, and
yeah.
now we're to the point where we are zooming in on. You know what it reminds me of the like Kojima stuff. Like everyone, they're looking around. Everyone's Kojima to them right now, like trying to hide stuff and plant Easter eggs. Meanwhile, this person at a 9 to 5 is just like trying to work on code at a computer, and this is it's tough right now. Like people just want to know what Sony's working on so badly that this is what's happening. And it's like, wow. On one hand, it's Sony should be happy that people desperately want to know. But on the other hand, it's like, come on, Sony, just say something. It's okay. You're allowed to say something. No one is like, man, we gotta preserve those Concord sales. We cannot get the hype off of Concord onto something else. You should probably get the hype off of Concord onto something else right now. It's okay. You're allowed to announce something else at this point because it's just look, we're in summer right now, I know, and it's a lot of people are at these studios and stuff are going on their vacations, and yeah, like it's a lot of preparing for end of August for Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show, the holiday push. So things will start moving. Just hang out, relax. We'll get there. I promise. We'll get there. Sony will have another event. They'll launch some big games. Leave the
Yeah.
person at the cubicle alone.
It was just I don't know. I find it's just silly. The thing is too, it's like a lot of offices are usually prepped about this kind of thing. Like if like cameras are going to be in the office,
Like
like
someone's just busted in the door, like running through without anyone knowing.
like they're told to like that's why like the Smite picture was like clear as day. Like
Yeah.
that's the one where people could pinpoint what that was from. So it's like I don't know. It's like one, probably nothing. Two, if it was like okay, cool, but like that doesn't tell us anything. Like some people think it like oh, it looks like maybe Blue Point's thing because it looks similar in some way to that one image from the Insomniac breach. It's like
Mhm.
okay, I'll humor that. We still don't know anything. We just don't. Like
Yeah. I feel like some people just like the idea of discovering this stuff before we're supposed to see it. Even if it is this grainy 320p image that's zoomed in and blown up, and it's like that's Blue Point's game. It's that smudge next to another smudge. We did it. It's like
yeah,
great. It is funny though that this is where Sony is right now because of the I'm gonna assume secrecy and not just stuff not going well in the background. I mean, obviously they had to tell us about The Last of Us Online being canceled. That's something I consider looking at like, okay, that didn't go well for them. Uh, I like to think that they just don't want to announce things until we're closer to release. Like they don't want to have a game that they announce and then it's not out for 3 years. They want to have a game they announce and it's out next year kind of thing.
This
So,
is my understanding right now with most of the first party studios. They're
yeah.
just not saying anything until like they have a lot to show or they feel confident about a release window. And like that's the cool thing about like Tsushima 2. Because I think once we see Tsushima 2, you're not going to have to wait that long to play it,
Right.
which will be exciting.
That's great. I'm here for that. I'm excited for Tsushima 2. Well, I'm curious if they're going to call it that Tsushima 2 or Ghost of something else. So that's all. That's all I'm curious about. I think it's gonna be cool though.
So we had that, right? But that it doesn't end there. So we had this
No,
other
that's
thing where concept art was seemingly leaked, I guess, or I don't know. I wouldn't call it a leak, but
hmm.
it was like a casting call that PlayStation did for like a game, right? So there was like a reference image of like, oh, here's what we're looking for. If you look like this, come to the audition. The concept art showed like an older man and woman, but like their face was blurred and their clothing was blurred too. And so that's an image that's been floating around. A
What if
lot of
someone
people
just shows
talk.
up with a blurred face? They just
Well,
like they walk around with like a pixel blur on their face all the
they
time.
got their guy.
Yeah, there it is. We figured it out.
So people
Is
are
it
talking about that one as well.
is an older man and it was an older man and woman? You said.
Older man, older woman. The casting call did label this as an action adventure game featuring intense violence, which, that's enough to, okay, I'll let the speculation go here. That's fine. Because I'll tell you, the concept art does in a way like, I think that the easiest line people are drawing here is like, oh, that looks like Naughty Dog.
Yeah, Last of Us
So
3 or a new. I mean, the new IP I would hope is like further along than trying to get casting going now. It's like that would be great. But again, Last of Us got canceled. Last of Us, who knows? But that's maybe Last of Us 3. Maybe that's for characters in that game. I don't know.
yeah, it's again, it's one of those things where it's like it's cool to see, but like
Mhm.
I don't know. There's just there's just not much to be said about it, quite frankly. So, but that did show up. It was a real thing apparently. So, you know, big video game news here. Video
As
games are
much as I
being
make
made.
fun of some of the industry for this, you know what? It is nice to see the passion that people will go out and find these casting calls and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's something to that where people are really into this stuff, they're really invested in it. So I'll give them credit on that.
I mean, I can't even talk shit. Like I obviously I follow it too. So it's I guess the difference here is that when I see it, I go, oh, cool. But and then others, it's like a huge comment thread going like trying to figure out exactly like, all right, it's got to be them.
well, well,
It's fun though. It is fun. All right. Well, casting call. I guess that segues nicely into the video game actors' strike over AI concerns.
mm,
That strike is now effective. It began on July 26th. SAG-AFTRA is negotiating with Activision, Blind Light Disney Electronic Arts, Formosa Interactive, and Insomniac Games. Llama Productions, Take Two, VoiceWorks Productions, excuse me, and WB Games. We talked about this a bit on the Spawncast already. The basic outline here is that there is a sort of cutoff right now in terms of what projects are safe, what projects aren't. Some, if they're well underway, then they're not going to be halted by this. So something like Grand Theft Auto 6, from what we're hearing, that project's okay. For
that was my
Insomniac,
big trump card too,
yeah,
man.
that would have been a big deal. Insomniac's apparently okay with at least Wolverine. I'm not sure about like Spider-Man 3 or anything, but for the foreseeable future, Insomniac's probably still able to keep working on whatever they're primarily working on, which is probably Wolverine. But yeah, I mean it's a big deal, right? Because it's over AI protections. We can probably probably figure out what's going on here. So a lot of companies want some sort of gray path here to utilize AI and reduce labor costs and not have to use as much performance capture. But that's also completely
They are trying to
at,
keep that language completely generalized.
yeah.
They don't want it, like, I'm sure on the SAG after side, they want as clear and concise language as possible. Then on the other side, they're trying to do all these weird general statements and these outs that are baked into the contract language. And that seems to be the sticking point is AI, and to me, now is the time to negotiate it and figure it out, because this, I assume, is a contract that would last several years. Like they're gonna sign something that's like, hey, next, I don't know if the next decade, but probably at least the next 5 years, I assume. And dude, AI in the last 5 years has advanced significantly. And the thing that people really need to understand is like AI is going to like turbocharge AI. So you're going to get to the point where AI is working to develop AI, which is already kind of happening because bots are developed to then train AI. So now you would have some sort of general intelligence AI that would work on AI, and it gets a little crazy. So you got to do it now. And I get why they're making this push, because have you seen videos just pop up online and it looks real? Like the visuals look real, the audio, and then you'll see some sort of like community thing underneath on Twitter X, or if you go online, they'll put like a little annotation underneath. Oh, this is completely AI generated. It's like,
Yeah.
really? Like that's not an actual person. That's not voice, nothing. It's all completely created by a computer or an AI. It's all digitized. It's crazy to think about that. It's also kind of dangerous because you see a lot of stuff can just be faked almost one to one now online. So, that's almost become a weapon at this point. So that's the extent we're looking at AI, and they're just trying to say, hey, we want to make sure we protect the they specifically mentioned off-screen talents, and I assume that's because if you're on screen, even if they use it for AI, your likeness is involved. So like it's going to be hard for them to win against that in court, because you're using me in a certain way here. Because even if you're CG or CGI in a movie, you'd still get credit for it or something. So off screen, by the way, is also mentioned, like mocap, I believe, was brought up, and I didn't even think of that. But technically, if you're doing mocap and stuff, you would be in the credits. You'd get credit, you get some kind of credit for that. But if they
Yeah.
can process your movements and stuff for, let's say, like a front roll, if you're playing in a third person action adventure game and you do a roll as your character and you had to do that through mocap, well, let's say you then have an AI learn your movements and stuff, come up with a bunch of different variations, and then use that for the next game instead of hiring you to do maybe a sideways roll. Well, I mean, that's probably, I assume that's something they're also working to protect against. That's what I mean. It goes really, really deep here with stuff that I'm sure most of us aren't even thinking about now, but we'll be like 3 years from now, go, I can't believe AI is able to do this currently.
It's like it's such an overarching problem just societally. Like, obviously, this is about voice actors and performance capture and things like that, but it's just like it's a wild west. As you said, like it's gotten so much better recently. There's still like certain giveaways, like sometimes there's still that synthetic look to it or something, but like it's nuts how within 2 years it's like a night and day difference. I would love to be a fly on the wall and see what these conversations are looking like right now, because they say like they've agreed on 24 out of 25 things. The 25th one is AI, and no company is gonna like they want to use it in some way, shape, or form. Like this,
Oh, they definitely do.
to
Yeah.
dial it more specifically to the Sony, not even just SIE, the entire organization, right? The Sony group. We had the CEO Kenichiro Yoshida and also Hiroki Totoki talk about this during their corporate strategy meeting for this year, 2024. Very recently, they mentioned that we could use AI for quality assurance. We can use it for localization. It's like that right off the top is just concerning, deeply concerning for the workforce. So, and we're already talking about an industry that's lost, not 100,000, but tens of thousands of jobs in the last 2 years. So this
What's
is tough,
interesting?
John.
What's interesting is I'm trying to remember. I feel like it was Take Two Strauss Zelnick. He had discussed AI in games because, of course, he's being quizzed about this on like CNBC or anything really that's diving into like the business aspect of it, as they see Nvidia explode in value because they're going to be kind of propelling and being relied on to power this generation of AI development. he was asked about the idea of AI in gaming, specifically for development. He still says that it's not really going to make things cheaper. It's just going to make it better, but because you're then just giving them a tool to be able to create more, he believes that games will just get better, but you're still going to spend a lot of money on these things. It's not all of a sudden overnight going to be cheap. But he did bring up the idea that these studios, like, or publishers, Take Two, umbrella of studios, would actually develop their own AI in house, similar to how they develop middleware. So they would develop AI similar to what we see with OpenAI or Google, uh, Microsoft, all these big companies making their own artificial intelligence. You would have Take Two make one. You would have you'd have Square Enix make one or something. That's kind of what they're getting at here. And it's like, I didn't even think of that even. And they would just share it between studios internally. And we'd refer to it like we refer to Ubisoft Snowdrop engine. Oh, well, they have this AI. That's their engine. It's like,
Mhm.
God, I didn't even think about that. That's what I mean. There's stuff that'll be very apparent to us in 5 or 10 years that we're not even thinking about now. And that's why I understand why they're doing it. They have to make a move now and get it in writing. Always get stuff in writing. That's what they're trying to do. So they're going to try to hold out. I I don't know how many projects are going to be delayed because there are probably things in development we don't even know about right now that would be affected by this. So we wouldn't know it got delayed. They would just, okay, I guess we'll announce it 3 months later than we were planning on it, and that'll be it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious as to how long it will take for some kind of agreement to happen, since both sides are probably very persistent with what they're looking for out of this agreement. So I don't know. I feel like it could go on for quite a bit, but
everyone's dug in.
yeah, it's
Mm.
it's it's a nutty thing for sure. Especially because like you said, think for sure it's going to have a place in games. It's just a matter of how do we navigate it in a way where it's not replacing human work. So um, Strauss makes a good point. I would hope that's the path that most studios will take. Is that how do you make it an extension of human work and not a
Right.
replacement?
Yes.
Because that's
Yes.
the thing. There's very clear upside. We know what AI can do. It's incredible, especially within 5 years. Who knows what the hell this thing's going to be able to do? Especially if it gets maybe a little bit more proprietary in house, as you're implying, right? Maybe PlayStation Studios is looking to develop their own sort of shared technology that all the
Oh, I'd have
studios
to
can
assume
use.
so. Microsoft
Yeah,
is. I figure they would.
I mean, it's great. Like when you were just talking now, like you're bringing up so many points where it's like, God, this is it's such a rabbit hole with AI and where this
Mhm.
goes, right? There's so many
It is.
facets that we're not thinking about or covering just yet, but you're right about everything. It's just, I just, my concern as the workforce, it's got a place, but we have to navigate this in a way where it's an extension of human work. But, during that corporate strategy meeting, I mean, it was outlined right then and there. We can use this for quality assurance. We can
Mhm.
use this for localization. Those are already jobs that are that's a very tough field for a lot of people, right? There's not a lot of work. It's not very safe. It's not comfortable, and you're going to start using AI for that. And I'm not saying they explicitly said, "Oh, we're going to replace humans," but it's like, how is that not the end goal eventually, is to at the very minimum offset some of your human work by
You
using
know what
that
you know
stuff.
what it reminds me of, Ryan? It reminds me of, so, like, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe, you go to the store and you'd pick a checkout line that have like 8 or 9 of them open, sometimes almost all of them open, right? It's just, okay, he's gotta go through his
Mm,
checkout lines. You talk to somebody, you buy
yeah.
your stuff from them, they bag it, you're off and running. Now you go to I was just at Food Lion earlier today, and I walk in, they got 2 lanes open, 2. Okay, I go to Walmart, same thing, they got like 2 open. But you know what has like ten stations open? The self-checkout. You know how many people are running the self-checkout? One person. And I
Yep.
think about that, I'm like, maybe that's it. They consolidate down and that's their plan. It's like AI will be run, we'll have 10 workers run by one person, and AI will be the 10 workers. And that is the unfortunate reality that I think we're heading towards. I guess the positive, let's say so that's kind of the more negative route. I feel like the positive route would be, okay, we're going to open 20 self-checkout stations that do 10 AIs, and we're going to make more games, and that's how we're going to make more money, and we're still going to employ the same amount of people. That would be the utopian
Yeah.
path. Would they do that? I don't know. I don't, because
See,
expenses are always so tantalizing for these companies to cut.
the problem with that though is that it's like there's already like so much saturation in games. So much stuff comes out. It's like it's already like really tough for like, an indie to send a game out there and just get some kind of coverage. God forbid AAA starts doing this, which it's it also is a bit weird in the sense that like we're in this landscape where AAA games take 5+ years to come out. Like we've touched on this topic so many times, but like the PS3 cycle, you'd have three Uncharted's and a Last
Mhm.
of Us as a new IP, all in one platform cycle. Then you've got this one where we have not had a new like Naughty Dog game just yet because it,
Yep.
it takes that long. So it's like, okay, it would be great to speed that up, and maybe go back to the frequency of like seeing multiple games come out on a console cycle. But in a way, like the stagnant AAA release has been offset by just the sheer volume of like just cool stuff hitting PSN all the time.
Have you so you've seen this then in comments and stuff. So I see it like different podcasts I'll listen to. I'll see in the comments or whatever, different videos. People will bring up, or even on, I guess even just on Twitter, X, just a lot of people say this. There's not anything to play right now. That kind of stuff. Do you see that online?
It's not only do I see it, but I've seen it described as you open the fridge, you've got a full fridge, and there's nothing you want to eat.
That's what I was gonna say. Are we sure it's nothing to play, or are we sure it's not game overload, like paralysis, like some kind of, you're paralyzed because there's just so much to play, and you're like,
John,
I don't
this has
know.
been going on for like more than like 10 years. How many Steam libraries are just sitting there rotting? Let's think about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, a lot.
Let's think about the Steam sale where you buy like 5 games that you're never going to play.
Oh, whoa, I'm feeling targeted right now. Yeah, yeah. That's
Right?
kind of what I think of is there's a lot to play right now, and I feel like the if someone brings up the idea of there being nothing to play, it's because they are very, very much focused in on the top like 5% of games. That's they're thinking of, right?
Yeah.
Where there is a lot that comes out every day. I feel like Steam gets 10 or 15 games a day or something crazy happens. Especially now because we don't wait for the Tuesday or the Friday or something like we used to way back in the day, where it's like stores would get shipments of games and you knew which day to go there to see what new came out. Now it's like I bet you a game came out, like games came out while we were recording this just now. That's what it's like right now.
Yep.
So maybe it is just overload, but if you're thinking I want the PlayStation Studios, the next big game, where's my Naughty Dog game? Where's my Sucker Punch game? Then I kind of get what they're saying, but still it feels like at that point, if it's not there, yeah, look around. Look around. There's stuff. There is, Go play Jean d'Arc. That's right there. PlayStation Plus, premium, boom. You can buy it a la carte. How much is it?
Probably
And
10.
look. That's a good $10 right there.
That's a
That's a solid spend.
solid $10.
Good spend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is that upside. Maybe we will see more AAA come out on a more consistent basis. The other angle is
Yeah.
having, indies or like one-man teams or whatever start making more ambitious projects than they otherwise were not able to do.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
You can fill out an open world maybe really well that way.
I definitely think a lot about how much it's going to improve games, but the concern is definitely just making sure we're cutting into human work, and not to like have this big meta commentary thing, but like I always like I like technology. Like I
Mhm.
find this stuff fascinating. It's not like I don't, I'm like firmly against AI, but the sort of long term vision I sometimes picture. I don't know if you ever think about this, but it's like 50, 100 years down the road, like we'll probably be dead by then. But it's like there's at a certain point, so many things will be automated. Just functionally, society has to like figure itself out again. Like there's going to be a lot of just work free people, people that don't have
Yep.
to work to
the
live.
to my
It's just,
understanding,
you know what I mean?
the utopian idea is if AI rose to power to where it would control, or not, well, I guess maybe even control, but basically run everything, take care of everything, all the jobs would be done, then there would just be basically freedom and money would exist, but not really. It's hard to describe. It wouldn't really exist. It's kind of like, Star Trek, they say there's no money. Like that's the idea. Like money doesn't really exist in Star Trek, but they still are able to buy stuff. They're still able to have all these materials come in. But the idea would be that AI would basically cover all of our needs in terms of workforce to where like a universal basic income would just be shared. And like, so for example, if you need a job done, a person would have to be paid for it. AI would do it in some regard. You'd go to the doctor and a robot doctor would tell you what's wrong, or if you need an addition to your house, a bunch of robots would come out and do it. That's kind of the idea.
I
And
love your
humans can just go play
examples.
golf all day.
If I need an addition to my house,
But
robots will
what
come and do
if
it.
you didn't have to schedule with a human? You called the robot hotline and they told the other robots there to pack the robot truck. All this is wired into the AI network. They roll out, robots pop out of the back, unfold, and just start like right there an hour later. You're
You're
not
not
setting appointments or anything.
you're not attaching the word robot to other
I'm
thing.
everything.
Yeah,
I'm putting robot
yeah.
on everything. It doesn't matter.
Well, so the point I want to circle back to though, it's like it's like how do we go down that path over like a 50, 100 year period, but how do we do it to where like there's not like multiple like financial crises playing
Oh,
out
no,
or
we're
like
gonna live through the worst. I'm gonna tell you now,
it's
at our age currently, we're gonna live through the worst of it. By the time we're almost dead, they're gonna come out the other side of it one way or the other, most likely. So
I
the
like
good news,
I like how you said just oh no we're fucked.
yeah, it's not gonna go great for us. No, we're gonna be,
I'm
if it plays out like that, we're gonna go through all kinds of hardships and frustration and fighting over AI. But our great grandkids most likely will either be pretty much ruled over by the machines, or they'll flourish alongside the machines. So it's it's a weird future right now. Here's the good news. Okay, there is a outside chance, that we make it to the singularity then, and we can fuse with the machines, and our conscious can be uploaded to the machines, and like in Futurama where they have heads in jars, and we can live out our lives and see it all happen.
in a museum.
Probably. Or hey, maybe you can get one of those cool robot bodies and like roll over.
Like Al Gore.
Yeah.
uh,
I'm curious what AI is going to bring, but it is it is a strange future coming up, people. I'm telling you. Oh, I will ask this though. The more I've thought about this, the more I've looked around, and whenever I bring up AI with people, it does make me wonder this. From our angle, the consumer angle, the one that this is being sold to us as making our lives technically better, I have never heard anyone go, "Man, we really need AI." Has anyone really asked for AI?
uh, it's you know what I think it's one of those things where like people don't actively think about that. It's like when like a company solves a problem that maybe didn't need solving at first, but once they figure it out, then people love it. Kind of
Yeah,
like that and that same like nobody's actively saying like we need AI for X, Y, and Z. But once that happens, then somebody would go, "Oh man, this is amazing. Why weren't we doing this before?"
yeah. It's just I've never really heard anyone go, "Well, this is the only way this is going to work is if I have AI tomorrow," or so. It's never really been it's never really been brought up, or even like problems that AI is working to solve. I've never heard anyone go bring that up. So it's interesting because it feels like people are being told they need AI when like they can't even conceptualize what it is. Like it seems strange. I don't know. And it feels like AI kind of, in the regard that is now, sort of popped up out of nowhere 6 years ago. Like I've gone
Came
down
up
this
on
rabbit
us
hole and looked, and I'm
fast.
like, this really kind of came out of nowhere. This is kind of strange. So I don't know.
Hmm. Food for thought.
Maybe the aliens will get here first, and then we won't have to go through the AI singularity.
I would love that.
There you go. We're in.
Take me
Just
back to
right
the
ahead of the PS7. That'd be cool.
take me back to the Area 51 memes where it's like, oh,
Oh,
me and my new
man.
alien,
Those are the good days. Those are the good days.
me and my new alien vibing. All right, John. Let's move on to the best segment of this show. PSX, go and give it to you.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool.
Talking
I'm
about
ready.
some kind of noteworthy topic in the PlayStation landscape, maybe a little bit obscure, maybe something you've never heard about before, maybe it's just some sort of weird product that Sony offered, maybe something that you just need to find out about today. I want to talk about the Netflix PS3 disc. You probably
Oh,
remember this.
I had the Wii Netflix
The
disc.
Wii Netflix disc. Which one came first? Because I feel like it was actually, no, I think it was PlayStation 3.
It
So
might have been
three
PS3.
Yeah, it's 360 at the time, right? This was a big deal for 360. It was a pretty big deal that 360 had Netflix first, and it
Mhm.
was like it was a proper client. You would download it and be able to use it on 360. This was in Netflix's very early days. PlayStation 3 didn't get it. Eventually, it did, but the first iteration of it was a disc. But it was a streaming disc, as in it still worked like how we all use Netflix today, which is
Mhm.
you load an application, then you start streaming. But I don't remember exactly, was this ever true where like the reason why it was a disc was because that was how they could circumvent an agreement with Microsoft? Do you remember that?
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that though. That's a good point because I'm sure Microsoft had some kind of agreement where they had that
I
application specifically because they made a big push early on for
Mhm.
multimedia functionality with that Blade system. They had an entire tab that was all multimedia. They had the remote they were trying to sell. It was a big push as not just a video game system, but like that media box. So I wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I remember hearing that a lot at the time. So I'm not sure if that was ever true, but the reality is that when PS3 first got it, it was a disc. So you could go to netflix.com and say, I want the PS3 Netflix disc. They'd send it to you because they still also did that in general for their DVD program. They were always sending out DVDs if you were signed up to that portion of the business. But you would use a Netflix disc, insert that into your PS3, then that would, load in the application. And that's how you would stream your movies and TV shows. And it was a little oddity. It didn't stick around for very long because eventually PSN did get a Netflix app, which you
Mhm.
would download and be able to use it
Yep.
from there. But that was something where, like, I had the Netflix disc. I used it all the time.
Oh, you
That was like
did.
that was the first time
Oh,
I got Netflix. Was
oh, really? It was the
yeah when it
PS3 disc.
when it came to
Wow.
PlayStation 3, because this was also Sony's big thing with PlayStation 3. It too was meant to be a multimedia,
Mhm.
foundation of the household, and in a way they accomplished it much better than Microsoft because it had a hard drive with every system, had Blu-ray,
Blu-ray. HDMI
yeah,
out at the time.
HDMI out. It was a lot more conducive to that kind of experience, which eventually
Optic out too.
led the PlayStation 3 to be the number one platform for Netflix at the time. It
A
was
lot of discs went out then.
well, I think it was after the app got sent out. The disc is
What
cool.
happens if you
I
what happens
still
if you
got
pop it in
mine.
now?
You know what? I want to do that soon because I do still have it. Because I would assume it's something where you insert it and it loads the old application, but either they let you patch it, so you get like the modern version of it, or it just like you can't patch it. But I don't remember if you had to patch it or not. Like I genuinely don't remember.
That sounds like a YouTube short. You're popping it and be like error. That's what
Yeah,
happens when you pop the disc in.
that's what happens. I'm sure we could easily find out, but like it's
What happens when you put a PS5 game in the PS3 error? That's what happens when you put the PS5 game.
I know I hate that shit so much. It's so stupid.
Hey, that's how you do it.
What happens when this thing that's not going to work and I try it anyway? All right.
Eh, we have proof now. It doesn't work.
That was cool though. PS3 Netflix desk. So yeah, we had it too, which you mentioned, but I believe that came after.
Yeah, yeah. The Wii. I remember that one was still kind of popular. Like that was. I remember the Wii itself was actually used for Netflix quite a bit back in the day, which actually makes sense considering the Wii was that. I mean, obviously it did really well in terms of sales, but it was also just in a lot of family, just in the living room. And Netflix really rose to prominence during that generation. So there are many people, even though it wasn't I mean, out of the 3, it was the worst experience because it was like 480p if
Yeah,
you had the component
480.
cables and stuff, but still, it was easy, it was right there, and I will say using the remote for Netflix was actually kind of cool. It worked well.
Yeah, I mean the Wiimote that makes it really usable from a UI perspective, a UX experience. But the Netflix PlayStation 3 disc, very cool.
How much is it now? What if I want
I
one?
The last time I checked on eBay, they were like $5-10. They were not a lot of money.
Let me take a look. Here it is. I found it. Oh, it has the paper sleeve too.
I still got mine.
Look at that thing. Instant
still-
streaming disc for PS3. Has the old PlayStation Network looking logo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This disc must be inserted each time to stream instantly from Netflix. Wow. It says do not return disc to Netflix. Well,
Yeah, because you got to use it.
wow.
But
That's interesting.
they
It's all
weren't
red,
wrong.
too. I like it. That's funny.
I never returned mine.
Huh.
They can't have it back. It's mine.
How much do you think the Wii disc is?
Probably
Let's
$1.
see. You think it's the same price?
I don't know. It can't be much.
Oh, it's $10.
$10 in this economy. You could
Yeah,
get
right?
Gone Dark for that on PSP.
There it is.
Jesus.
Wow, look at that thing. What happens when you put the Wii disc in the Wii? It's a new series.
Probably doesn't work.
Look at that. They have the Wii logo and everything on there. Look at that. Wow. Huh. That was interesting. Man, that was such a weird time period.
It's a very weird time.
It
Yeah.
was. We're just
PS3's got a lot
figuring
of
out
them.
the internet.
Yeah,
Which-
I'm so curious if that was a thing though. If that was the way Sony got around it, was offering a disc.
What date did what year did the PS3 Netflix app come out?
I want to say like 2010 or 2011 or something.
Let's see. It does not say. This says 2009, but oh, here we go. Netflix on PS3 disc free next week. I found the PlayStation blog post for it.
Oh, well,
It was in 2000 October 14th, 2010.
That was right.
Oh, they must have had a trailer here or something. It's kind of broken looking. Yeah, it's broken.
The trailer.
It looks like they had a trailer for this. Yeah,
Probably.
it was on. Whoa, what is that? Vidler. What in the world? What is this?
Vidler.
That's where they uploaded it to. I had
the site that's hosting it.
Yeah, it's on something
Vidler?
called Vidler.
I never even heard of Vidler on the Roof.
Vidler on the Roof. It's all broken. That's funny. Netflix on PS3 disc free next week. Let's go to the comments. OMG with 8 exclamation points. Finally, awesome. Yeah, everyone seems really excited. Wow, good job, PlayStation.
What a different time. People were excited about their announcements.
Oh, Canjoli says it's on their birthday. Wow. Oh, rock on. Yeah, people seem happy. There you go. October 14, 2010, the following week, Netflix went disc-free on the PS3.
There you go.
Now you know. Serious trivia right there, I'm sure.
Well, I think we did it, John. I think we covered everything.
That's a good episode.
Yeah.
Talked about all kinds of randomness, all kinds of stuff. So we're back in midway through August. We're gonna be back just ahead of Concord's launch. Well, I mean,
really?
the following episode, we'll at least be able to reflect on how Concord launched. So I'm really curious how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll just say the same thing for another 15 minutes.
I don't know. Do you think Sony will have reacted by then?
What are they gonna do?
I don't know. There's got to be something. They got to do something if it launches and it's like ugly.
I don't. It's like they're printing discs and everything. Like you just can't make the game free right now. You just can't. So
yeah, it's a little late for that.
We'll see though.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. But that was a good episode. Episode 4 in the books now. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back in a couple of weeks to do it all over again. We'll see you then.